Chapter 1665. Not good. When Nye Tian saw the astral soul armor shattering, he screamed in his heart. After which, a vast amount of draconic chi erupted from his body, instantly condensing into a gigantic golden dragon that enveloped his entire body. Die! When Duguanai saw that Nye Tian's defense had been broken, he roared in rage. With a flash, the 100 transformations of the devilish void stabbed out fiercely, and another black sword shadow flew towards Nye Tian. Roar! Sensing the danger, the gigantic golden dragon around Nye Tian's body roared in rage, and its gigantic body tumbled out, rushing towards the black sword shadow. Boom! The gigantic dragon and the black sword shadow collided, and a deafening sound rang out. The sword intent and draconic chi instantly exploded in the air. A terrifying shockwave blasted over, and Nye Tian's wings flapped as he hurriedly retreated 1,000 meters away. He steadied himself and felt the fluctuations in the air, but he couldn't sense Duguanai's presence at all. That moment earlier was too dangerous. If it wasn't for Nye Tian forcefully activating the sovereign dragon vein, he would have been severely injured even if he didn't die. Do I have to use the 3 great forbidden techniques? Nye Tian stared at the dark space as his heart sank. By activating the 3 great forbidden techniques, Nye Tian's strength would undoubtedly increase tremendously. However, at the same time, he would also be suppressed by the restrictions of the arena. As such, the increase in his battle prowess wouldn't be too great. Moreover, the 3 great forbidden techniques would only increase his attack power, and not his defense. Right now, he had no idea where Duguanai was, and was completely treated as a living target by the latter. Nye Tian, dark things must be suppressed by something even darker. Just as Nye Tian was hesitating whether or not to use the 3 great forbidden techniques, Fat Cat's voice rang out, reminding him in a low voice. Something even darker? Nye Tian froze, and his eyes flickered as he instantly understood. The thing Fat Cat was talking about was the fiend god nascent embryo. Cher had once said that Nye Tian's blood contained an extremely evil energy. Actually, this evil energy originated from the fiend god nascent embryo. The power of the Devil's Night Eye was extremely dark, but the power of the fiend god nascent embryo was even darker. Nye Tian, your defense has already been broken by me. How are you going to fight me next? At this moment, Duguanai's voice rang out once more, reverberating through the air as though it was coming from all directions. Next, it's time for me to retaliate. A strange smile appeared at the corner of Nye Tian's mouth. Immediately after, 8 streams of dark energy surged out of his body. Like 8 huge tentacles, they extended into the air. These were the 8 streams of divine and devil power that Nye Tian had awakened. The fiend god energy spread out in the space, and the space sealed by the Devil's Night Eye started to crack. The power of the Devil's Night Eye started to crumble bit by bit. The fiend god energy can indeed break open the Devil's Night abyss. Nye Tian felt the space around him become much clearer, and he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Huh! At this moment, Duguanai also sensed something and exclaimed in confusion, what kind of power is this? It can actually break open the Devil's Night abyss. He never imagined that Nye Tian's body contained the power to break open the Devil's Night abyss. Duguanai, your time of death has come. Nye Tianling laughed coldly, and the 8 fiend god energy were like swords that tore apart the night, completely tearing the Devil's Night abyss apart. Impossible! Duguanai felt that something was amiss. He let out a strange cry, and with a flicker of his silhouette, he slashed out with his sword towards Nye Tian. Rumble! A terrifying sword shadow akin to a gigantic dragon of darkness lunged towards Nye Tian. Nye Tianling laughed, and the sword intent around him surged as he executed the Heaven Slash Sword Absolute Slash. A ball of blazing flames could be seen on the tip of the sword, exuding an extremely violent aura. Prideful Skies 3 Absolutes, Absolute Sword Intent. In the next instant, Nye Tian pierced out with his sword, as a gigantic sword imbued with the astral soul flames whistled through the air. A terrifying sword intent gushed forth, as sword light shot out over 10,000 meters, akin to a ray of sunlight that broke through the darkness. This sword strike of Nye Tian's was infused with the power of the astral soul flames, as well as the tyrannical might of the prideful sky's three absolutes. Rumble! In midair, the sword shadows of darkness and the sword shadows of flames clashed against each other, as a deafening explosion rang out. Waves of sword energy gushed forth, wreaking havoc in the air. Chi chi chi. The Devil's Night Abyss, which was originally on the verge of collapse under the impact of the fiend god energy, was once again struck by the terrifying sword intent, and was instantly torn apart. An ear-piercing sound rang out in the air. The two of them have appeared. At this moment, the crowd finally saw the silhouettes of Nye Tian and Duguanai, and they couldn't help but exclaim in shock, as their eyes trembled violently. The eyes of Fengbu and Mo Yanwei trembled, but upon seeing that Nye Tian was fine, they instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Earlier, the two of them didn't know what happened on the stage, and they couldn't help but be worried for Nye Tian. At this moment, the two of them were extremely shocked. They didn't know how Nye Tian broke through the Devil's Night Abyss. Both of them were over-god experts, and they could sense how terrifying the Devil's Night Abyss was. With their strength, they naturally could easily break through the Devil's Night Abyss. However, Nye Tian was, after all, only a mid-god expert. It was extremely strange that he could actually break through the Devil's Night Abyss. On the stage, Nye Tian and Duguni's silhouettes became clear, and they stood upright in midair. Nye Tian, what kind of power did you use just now? Duguni's expression was incomparably astonished, and his voice was trembling slightly. Is there any need for you to know? Nye Tianling sneered. He took a step forward, and the sword aura around him became more and more berserk. His ice-cold eyes were filled with killing intent. Nye Tian, I have to say that your strength has exceeded my expectations. Duguni's eyes were gloomy, but he was much calmer than before. The corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile, and he said in a deep voice, We will meet again. With the Devil's Night Abyss broken, Duguanai had lost his greatest support. He knew that he wasn't a match for Nye Tian, and so he prepared to leave. Duguni's eyes trembled slightly, and then a black vortex surged out. It was the space-time vortex. This move again? Nye Tianling sneered, but his eyes were filled with extreme disdain. He said in a deep voice, Duguanai, you have no chance. Almost at the same time, the void suddenly trembled, and then two strange forces appeared. Like sharp blades, they directly tore apart the black vortex in front of Duguanai. The sudden scene caused Duguanai to be abruptly stunned, and his dark eyes revealed great fear. Using the same trick so many times, do you think I'm a fool? Nye Tian sneered in his heart. He had long known that Duguanai would use the space-time vortex to escape, so he had already prepared the two divine demon powers. Since the divine demon powers could tear apart the Devil's Night Abyss, of course, it could also tear apart the black vortex. Duguanai, the last sword will take your life. The next moment, Nye Tian's cold voice sounded, and the sword aura of his whole body soared to the extreme. The blood and chi around his body surged, and he whispered, the ultimate killer move of Ao's sword technique. Heaven's soul, unyielding soul, God-killing blow, burning the world. As soon as Nye Tian finished speaking, the sword intent around his body suddenly boiled and actually started burning. It transformed into surging flames that seemed to be able to incinerate everything in its path. This was the ultimate move of Ao's sword technique, burning the world. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, Nye Tian slashed down with his sword. Suddenly, endless sword aura gathered, and a flaming sword appeared. With the power to destroy heaven and earth, it crazily pressed down on Duguanai. Duguanai felt the terrible pressure and couldn't help but scream. The fear in his heart was magnified infinitely through his trembling eyes. Chapter 1666. Above the arena, under the pressure of the aura of death, Duguni's face revealed an uncontrollable fear. His mouth was wide open, but no words came out. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that this battle would have such an outcome. But it was too late. The fatal sword was already in front of him. Even if Duguanai was cunning, he was powerless to resist. He underestimated Nye Tion's strength. He did not expect the latter to have such a terrifying fiend god power in his body. The fiend god power was an extremely evil and dark power. This kind of power had an absolute suppression on the pupil of the Devil's Knight. This was the biggest reason for Duguni's defeat. Without the fiend god power, the outcome of this battle would be hard to predict. Boom! Hovering in midair, Nye Tion swung his sword down without the slightest hesitation. His eyes were filled with killing intent, without the slightest hesitation. Duguanai felt a powerful sword intent pervading his body. It instantly penetrated into his body, and turned into a violent wave of air that attacked his martial body. At this moment, his eyes were completely filled with despair. The crowd saw the scene above the arena and their expressions became lifeless. They were so shocked that they could not speak. Boom! In the next moment, Duguanai could no longer withstand the pressure of the sword intent in his martial body. His body suddenly trembled and directly exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, turning into a bloody light. Duguanai, this is the ending you wanted. Nye Tion looked at the place where Duguni's body exploded and said cold. Duguanai, the evil sword of the 3,000 small worlds, who had fought with Nye Tion many times and was known as Nye Tion's old enemy, was finally dead. Nye Tion had finally avenged Old Man Tian Huang and the Heaven Wasteland Hall. The crowd stared at the sky above the arena as their eyes trembled uncontrollably. No one had expected that this battle would end in such a manner. After killing Duguanai, Nye Tion let out a long sigh of relief. His taut face relaxed a lot. He looked at the floating divine spark, a ball of flame, and 2 black whirlpools in the air, and couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth as he murmured, "Duguanai, these things on you are all mine now." When Duguanai died, he left behind half of the dusk blade heart flame and the eye vortex formed by the Devil's Knight eye. As for Xue Wushuang's sage arm, it was completely destroyed. Twilight Blade's heart flame and Devil's Knight's ocular powers. These lessons were all good stuff. Nye Tion, be careful. However, at this moment, Little Fat Cat suddenly cried out, appearing to be extremely flustered. Nye Tion's eyes narrowed slightly, and then his expression changed abruptly. He actually sensed that there was a figure hiding in the void. Who is it? Get out here! Nye Tion's face darkened. With a low roar, he thrust his sword forward, and a mighty sword shadow shot towards a stretch of the void. The sword was like a dragon. It was so powerful that even the void trembled. Nye Tion, thank you for killing him for me, but the things he has on him don't belong to you. The void shook slightly, and a deep, hoarse voice rang out with a hint of playfulness in it. Then, the void shook slightly, and a black-clothed figure appeared. He completely ignored Nye Tion's sword, and with a wave of his hand, took away the dusk blade heart flame and Devil's Knight eye power. Damn it! Nye Tion's expression darkened. He roared and wanted to attack again, but found that the figure had disappeared. Nye Tion, I'll leave Duguni's godhead to you. It's useless anyway. In the next moment, a ridiculing voice resounded in the void. Nye Tion's expression darkened even more. In a flicker, he took Duguni's godhead and probed it with his divine sense. There wasn't the slightest bit of divine sense left in the godhead. His sword intent contained the terrifying soul-devouring sword intent. That sword strike just now was too terrifying. Not only did it destroy Duguni's martial physique, but it also destroyed the divine sense inside his godhead. Dugunai completely disappeared from this world. But this way, Nye Tian lost the opportunity to ask Duguanai some questions. He was very curious about who was behind Duguanai, who he worked for, and why did he want to kill Moihan and Moihan. Unfortunately, he couldn't get an answer to these questions now. Who is that person? Nye Tian became cold, his eyes flickered. He had expended so much effort to kill Duguanai, but this person took advantage of him. Of course, he was unhappy. However, this person's concealment skill was very strong. Nye Tian didn't notice him, and even the fat cat only sensed his presence at the last moment. To be able to escape Fat Cat's perception, this person was indeed an expert in concealment. Nye Tian, this person has a bloodline power that can help him completely conceal himself and restrain his aura. Fat Cat's blue eyes flickered as she said in a low voice, "Bloodline power." Hearing these 4 words, Nye Tian's eyes flickered, and a name appeared in his mind, Enai-Lin. Enai-Lin was an organization that specialized in collecting bloodline powers. Previously, during the grand competition of the 12 Shrine, Nye Tian met an opponent called Xin Wuhan. This person had 4 spiritual bloodlines at the same time. She was a person from Enai-Lin. A bloodline power with concealment ability was very rare. No wonder even the fat cat had only just discovered this person's existence. Although this person had only appeared for a short period of time, Nye Tian could sense that this person wasn't very strong. His combat power should be below Duguanai's, but his concealment skill was indeed astonishing. If this person is from Enai-Lin, then what is his relationship with Duguanai? Nye Tian thought to himself as his eyes couldn't help but flicker. After thinking for a long time, Nye Tian couldn't figure it out, so he had to give up. If he were to meet this person again, he would definitely be able to recognize him. Right now, the most important thing was still the Ghost King arena. Nye Tian killed Duguanai and won 20 matches in a row, finally gaining the qualification to challenge a mid-god arena lord. What kind of opponent would a mid-god arena lord be? Nye Tian murmured, the corners of his mouth raised into a faint smile. After a while, a figure in cyan appeared in the sky above the arena, and then an iron cage appeared in midair. A figure stood in the iron cage, staring at Nye Tian like a fierce beast. Another person controlled by the Heart Remnant's soul-sealing curse. Nye Tian looked up at the person in the cage. His eyes couldn't help but tighten, and his eyes released a strong anger. The Ghost King Palace Master used the cruel heart-sealing curse to control other warriors, turning them into his killing weapons. This method was really cruel and outrageous. Gui Nu, kill him! The cyan-clothed warrior in the sky ordered the person in the cage in a cold voice. This scene was very similar to the scene yesterday, but the original Chi Nu had become the current Gui Nu. Chapter 1667. Watch out! Seeing the scene above the arena, the crowd couldn't help but tighten their eyes and shout. The ghost slave's momentum was very strong. It was like a wild beast, reckless and reckless. Nye Tian looked at the ghost slave crazily pressing down on his head, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The ghost slave's strength was very strong. It was already at the peak of the middle deity stage, and the residual heart-sealing spell in its body was even more terrible than Royu's. All in all, the ghost slave's strength was far more terrible than Royu's. Unfortunately, in Nye Tian's eyes, such strength was not a threat at all. Die! Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed, and then he suddenly swung the long sword in his hand. The momentum of the sword soared up to the sky, and the shadow of the sword was like a dragon breaking out of the abyss, surging with terrible flames and blood chi, and rushed towards the ghost slave. The crowd frowned slightly. They didn't expect that Nye Tian was so fierce. He had just had a life-and-death battle with Duguanai, and now he dared to fight against the ghost slave head-on. Bang! The next moment, the two powerful forces collided with each other, and a loud bang broke out in the air. However, the sword's shadow that rose against the momentum was obviously more terrifying. It directly broke through the chi power around the ghost slave's body, and attacked the ghost slave's body. Chi chi chi. A harsh sound came from the air, and the whole space was filled with the sword will, as if it was burning. One move to end the battle. Nye Tian looked at the ghost slave seriously, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Bang! The moment he finished speaking, a dull sound came out. The ghost slave was hit by the sword shadow directly, and its body was drowned in the surging sword will. Its martial body directly collapsed, and it turned into blood light and disappeared. The tragic and bloody scene made everyone gasp, and their eyes were dull. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. One move, just one move, and Nye Tian directly killed the ghost slave. Nye Tian's strength was so horrible. No one expected that the battle between Nye Tian and the middle deity arena lord would be so simple and straightforward. Nye Tian stood in midair, retracting his aura as he spoke in a cold voice. So this is all you've got. Nye Tian had fought with rain before, so he knew that the more enraged a person was, the stronger they would be. Therefore, the best time to kill the ghost slave was the first time he made a move. At this time, the ghost slave was at its weakest. If the first strike failed to kill the ghost slave, then the next ghost slave would become stronger and stronger. Previously, when Nye Tian and Rainstorm fought, they were in the demigod arena, and their strength was suppressed. Now, he was in the medium god arena, and his strength was not suppressed at all. Therefore, the sword strike just now was enough for him to kill the ghost slave. The entire place was deathly silent, and even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Countless gazes were focused on Nye Tian, and besides surprise and shock, there was even more fear and dread. Nye Tian's strength was too strong, enough to make them feel fear. The cyan-clothed martial artist in the sky was also so shocked that he couldn't say a word for a long time, and his eyes were dull. After a long time, the cyan-clothed martial artist finally announced that Nye Tian had won the battle. As the cyan-clothed martial artist announced the result of the battle, the whole place was boiling with excitement. Everyone shouted in unison. Nye Tian had already defeated the demigod arena lord, and now he defeated the middle deity arena lord. He became the only person in the history of the Ghost King arena to defeat two arena lords. Nye Tian looked at the crazy crowd, but he turned a blind eye to them. These people were just onlookers, and they meant nothing to him. They were not cheering for Nye Tian, but for the winner. If it was someone else standing in the arena today, they would also be cheered. Nye Tian moved and came to the side of Feng Bu and Mo Yanwei, and was ready to leave. The middle deity arena was over, and tomorrow would be the high god arena. Nye Tian didn't want to waste any time. The battle with Duguanai gave him a new understanding of sword principle. Maybe he could use the remaining time to break through to the sword principle realm. Nye Tian didn't believe that Duguanai had such a strong talent in sword principle. He was sure that Duguanai must have received guidance from a sword principle powerhouse. Feng Bu and Mo Yanwei looked at Nye Tian in shock, and it took a long time for them to react. Neither of them thought that Nye Tian was strong to this extent. If Duguanai hadn't appeared today, Nye Tian would have easily taken down the middle deity arena lord. Nye Tian, it seems that you really have a chance to take down the high god arena lord. After leaving the arena, Feng Bu chuckled and said, I have to admit that I was wrong about you. I didn't expect you to be so strong. With your talent, if you reach the paramount god realm in the future, you will definitely be the strongest in the 9 realms. After witnessing Nye Tian's strength with his own eyes, Feng Bu had a very high opinion of him. Yes, I think so too. Mo Yanwei nodded firmly, and the way he looked at Nye Tian changed. Previously, he thought that Nye Tian had some ulterior motive for getting close to Moihan, but now he understood. With Nye Tian's talent and strength, there was no need for him to plot anything with Moihan. Let's go back, Nye Tian smiled faintly in the face of the two over God's praise. His expression didn't change much. Although Feng Bu and Mo Yanwei were very calm about him, Nye Tian didn't agree. He believed that as long as he could reach the paramount god realm, even if he was only at the early stage, he would be able to fight against the paramount god realm experts like Huojioshan with his 3 great forbidden techniques: the primal star stone, the fiend god origin embryo, the chaotic flame, the 3 great forbidden techniques, the supreme dragon vein, the tear of the princess, and so on. These terrifying trump cards would greatly increase as Nie Tion's strength increased. Nie Tion's strength would be unimaginably terrifying in the future. Feng Buyu and Mo Yanwei couldn't help but smile at each other when they saw Nie Tion's calm reaction. The latter was far more mature than they had imagined. The 3 of them didn't waste any more time and went straight to the Mo family's courtyard. After a while, Nie Tion and the others returned to the courtyard. The first thing Nie Tion did after returning was to check on Raincloud's condition. He was only relieved after he was sure that the latter was safe. Nie Tion sensed Raincloud's body. The dragon mark talisman was suppressing the remnant soul sealing curse pretty well, so she wouldn't be in danger for at least a few days. In the remaining time, Nie Tion prepared to cultivate hard and break through to the next realm in the Sword Dao. However, at this moment, his expression suddenly changed, as if he had sensed something. Nie Tion frowned and stepped out of the room. "Someone's coming," Nie Tion murmured. He activated the holographic divine sigil and spread his divine sense. 10,000 meters away, dozens of figures were running toward the Mo family's courtyard. They were all aggressive and murderous. At this moment, Feng Bu also appeared. He glanced at Nie Tion with a much more serious expression. Nie Tion. Then, the Mo family's secret guards also sensed that something was wrong. A dozen or so figures rushed into the sky and stood in the air. Chapter 1668. What a powerful aura! Seeing the scene in the sky, Nie Tion could not help but frown. He was quite surprised. The newcomer was very strong. He was able to force the Mo family's secret guards back with just his aura. The weakest of the Mo family's secret guards was at the peak of high god level. There were even several over-god level experts among them. As soon as the person shouted, the aura around him turned into billowing airwaves that pressed down on the courtyard. The entire courtyard immediately shook. Boom! In the next moment, a sword shadow surged into the sky, forcibly breaking through the sword aura in the sky. Then, a familiar figure appeared in the air. It was Mo Yanwei. Ouyang Fu! Mo Yanwei looked at the person who had come. His eyes narrowed slightly as he called out the other party's name. Ouyang! Hearing the surname, Nie Tion immediately realized that the newcomer was from the Ouyang family, one of the 3 evils families. Ouyang Kan, whom Nie Tion had killed in the arena, was from the Ouyang family. The Sangxi family was a family feud, and the Ouyang family was here to kill them. Mo Yuani and the others hid in such a remote place to avoid the Ouyang family. They did not expect to be found. Mo Yanwei, you are not my match. Get Mo Yuani out here. Ouyang Fu was very domineering. He did not take Mo Yanwei seriously at all. He roared and the sword aura around him kept increasing. Selfless sword. Seeing Ouyang Fu's aura, Mo Yanwei seemed to notice something. His eyes trembled and he could not help but cry out, "Selfless sword!" At the same time, Nie Tion's voice rang out. He was very surprised. Both of them realized at the same time that Ouyang Fu's way of the sword had reached the selfless sword realm. The godly realm of the sword had 6 major realms: sword pattern, sword vein, sword bone, sword essence, selfless sword, and unity of sword and martial arts. Every increase in realm was a qualitative improvement for a swordsman. Among all the swordsmen that Nie Tion had met before, sword essence was the highest realm. But now, Ouyang Fu had reached the selfless sword realm. He was only 1 step away from the peak of unity of sword and martial arts. Mo Yanwei was a swordsman with the essence of the sword, but compared to Ouyang Fu, he was much inferior. Mo Yanwei calmed down a little and said, O Yang Fu, I didn't expect your sword Dao to have reached the realm of forgetting yourself. No wonder you dared to bring so many people here. Mo Yanwei, since you already know how strong I am, then hurry up and scram. Let Mo Yuani come out and fight me, O Yang Fu said coldly. Apart from disdain, there was also extreme anger in his eyes. Ouyang Fu was the leader of the Ouyang clan, and he was a peak godlord. Combined with the Sword of Forgetfulness, he was strong enough to take on weaker paramount gods. Ouyang Fu, you heavily injured my big brother back then. Isn't that enough? Do you have to kill him before you stop? Mo Yanwei spoke in a deep voice, but his aura was obviously much weaker. He was no match for Ouyang Fu in the first place. Coupled with the fact that Ouyang Fu's sword Dao cultivation had broken through to the sword Oblivion realm, it was even more impossible for him to fight Ouyang Fu. It was no exaggeration to say that with Mo Yanwei's current strength, Ouyang Fu could kill him with a single sword strike. Not enough. Of course not. Ouyang Fu seemed to have lost his mind as he roared out, Mo Yuani killed my wife and son. If I, Ouyang Fu, don't avenge my wife and son, then I'll be a husband and a father in vain. Nie Tian could not help but frown as he looked at the two people in the sky. It seemed like the grievances between the Ouyang family and the Mo family ran very deep, to the point where they would not stop until one of them was dead. Mo Yuani's injuries were caused by Ouyang Fu, and according to Ouyang Fu, Mo Yuani had killed his wife and son. This grievance was even greater than the sky and deeper than the ocean. At this moment, several dozen black-clothed cultivators appeared behind Ouyang Fu. All of them surged with killing intent. Father, there's no need for us to waste our words on the Mo family. Let's just kill them all. A young man with evil eyes said coldly from behind Ouyang Fu. He radiated with a cold killing intent. He was Ouyang Fu's adopted son, Ouyang Lingxie. Nie Tian's gaze fell on Ouyang Lingxie. He could feel a very dark power surging in the latter's body, as if it would explode at any time. 9 Evil's sword seal. At the same time, Fat Cat exclaimed in surprise. 9 Evil's sword seal. Nie Tian shouted when he heard Fat Cat's words. The Sangxi family, Mo family, Ouyang family, and Ji family all had a bloodline sword seal. The Mo family had the flowing evil sword seal, the Ouyang family had the 9 evil sword seal, and the Ji family had the evil woman sword seal. However, according to Mo Yuani, the Ji family had disappeared for many years. Nie Tian looked at Ouyang Lingxie with a burning gaze. The 9 evil sword seal in the latter's body had been activated. Mo Yuani had said that it was very difficult to activate the 3 evil sword seal. He did not know how Ouyang Lingxie's 9 evil sword seal was activated. Ouyang Lingxie's killing intent was very strong. He actually wanted to kill everyone in the Mo family. Kill everyone in the Mo family. The people behind Ouyang Fu shouted in unison. Wait. Ouyang Fu waved his hand and signaled for everyone to not move. He looked at the small courtyard below and said in a cold voice, Mo Yuani, you killed my wife and son. I want you to get out here and give me an explanation. If you don't come out, I will kill everyone in the Mo family. Ouyang Fu's low and cold voice showed that he was extremely angry. No one could remain calm in the face of an enemy who killed their wife and son. Ouyang Fu. At this time, a voice sounded in the small courtyard. Mo Yuani's figure appeared, and Mo Ihan appeared with him. The latter supported Mo Yuani and stood in the air. Mo Yuani was seriously injured and needed help to stand in the air. Mo Yuani, you are finally willing to come out? Ouyang Fu's eyes trembled when he saw Mo Yuani. A terrifying killing intent surged around him. He wanted to cut Mo Yuani into 1,000 pieces and grind his bones into ashes. However, he didn't do anything. He wanted to know why Mo Yuani killed his wife and son. Ouyang Fu, I didn't kill your wife and son. I don't know where you got the news, but I, Mo Yuani, am not a heartless person. I will never kill a pregnant woman. Mo said in a deep voice, but his voice was very calm. When Ouyang Fu's wife and son died tragically, his wife still had an unborn child in her womb. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard Mo's words. No wonder Ouyang Fu was so angry. So this was the truth. Although Nie Tian didn't know Mo well, he didn't think the latter was the kind of person who would kill a pregnant woman. Mo, how dare you deny it? Ouyang Fu roared, and the anger in his eyes intensified. He suddenly looked at Moihan, who was next to Mo, and shouted, "How do you explain how your daughter's flowing evil sword seal was activated?" Huh! Mo's eyes darkened. He didn't quite understand Ouyang Fu's words. He asked in a deep voice, "What does the activation of my daughter's sword seal have to do with this matter? You still dare to say it has nothing to do with it?" Ouyang Fu saw that Mo was pretending to be a fool and was about to go crazy. He said angrily, "Mo, you are going to die today. I don't mind telling you that the person who activated the sword seal for your daughter told me that you killed my wife and son. Do you still want to deny it?" Chapter 1669. Ghost King Palace Master. Mo suddenly realized and called out the name in his heart. He didn't kill Ouyang Fu's wife and child, but the latter firmly believed that he killed them. Ghost King Palace Master, why did he frame me? Mo frowned. His heart was in turmoil and he couldn't speak for a while. Mo, you have nothing to say now, right? Ouyang Fu saw that Mo suddenly didn't speak and thought that the latter had a guilty conscience. He couldn't help but sneer, and the killing intent in his eyes became stronger. He stepped forward and almost condensed his killing intent to envelop Mo. At this moment, Ouyang Fu could directly kill Mo as long as he exerted a little force. "Big brother!" Mo Yanwei couldn't help but cry out when he saw that Mo was in danger. He stepped forward and wanted to help. "Don't move!" Mo waved his hand to stop Mo Yanwei. He suddenly looked up and firmly stared at Ouyang Fu. "Ouyang Fu, believe it or not, I still want to tell you that I didn't kill your wife and child. If I wanted to cause trouble for the Ouyang clan, I would only look for you and not your wife and child. I'm not despicable enough to cruelly kill a pregnant woman." Mo was sweating all over and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Ouyang Fu frowned and looked at Mo with cold eyes. There was a trace of hesitation in his stern eyes. The Ouyang clan and the Mo clan were enemies. Ouyang Fu had been dealing with Mo for several years and knew the latter very well. Mo even proposed to reconcile between the two clans, but Ouyang Fu refused. Based on Ouyang Fu's understanding of Mo, killing his wife and child was not something the latter would do. Mo, let me ask you, did the Ghost King Palace Master help open your daughter's evil flowing sword seal? Ouyang Fu calmed down and asked. Yes. Mo nodded when he heard Ouyang Fu say the Ghost King Palace Master's name. Sure enough, it was the Ghost King Palace Master who played trick. Why did he help your Mo clan? Ouyang Fu's face sank and cold said, "Did you make a deal with him? He asked you to kill my wife and child before helping your daughter open the sword seal? You killed my wife and child to open the sword seal for your daughter." Mo frowned. His eyes were filled with surprise and doubt. He asked in a deep voice, "Where did these words come from?" "The Ghost King Palace Master told me personally." Ouyang Fu replied solemnly. "Nonsense." Mo's expression changed, and he couldn't help but growl. Sure enough, it was the Ghost King Palace Master who framed him, and it was a flawless trap. He even thought of a deal. In Ouyang Fu's opinion, it was very likely that Mo would do this to allow the Mo clan to have a cultivator who could activate the flowing evil sword seal. Moreover, the Ghost King Palace Master also mentioned him, which made Ouyang Fu even more convinced. "You're saying that the Ghost King Palace Master framed you?" Ouyang Fu could not help but frown when he saw Mo's reaction. The doubt in his eyes deepened. Mo Yuani calmed down and said, I don't know why the Ghost King Palace Master did this. But that was the truth. I didn't kill your wife and child. The reason why the Ghost King Palace Master was willing to open the sword seal for Ihan was because my family won the Ghost King Challenge tournament. Mo Yuani's face was stern, and his words were sonorous and powerful, without the slightest hesitation. Ouyang Fu frowned and looked at Mo Yuani with burning eyes, as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, Ouyang Fu calmed down a lot and asked word by word, Mo Yuani, what you said just now, is it true? Mo Yuani was not timid at all. Instead, he stepped forward and said sternly, I, Mo Yuani, swear in the name of the Mo clan's ancestors that I absolutely did not kill Ouyang Fu's wife and child. This. Ouyang Fu felt Mo Yuani's sternness and couldn't help but be stunned. The corner of his mouth trembled, and he couldn't speak for a while. Mo Yuani's guarantee was powerful, and he bet on the Mo clan's ancestors, so it couldn't be false. Could it be that the news that the Ghost King Palace Master told him was false? If that was the case, why did the Ghost King Palace Master do this? As for his wife and son, who was the one who killed them? Ouyang Fu's body trembled, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back, almost unable to stand. Mo Yuani was so determined that he couldn't be lying, so the person who lied could only be the Ghost King Palace Master. In that case, the person who was most likely to kill his wife and child was the Ghost King Palace Master. In fact, even according to the Ghost King Palace Master himself, he was inextricably linked to the death of Ouyang Fu's wife and child. Ouyang Fu's original plan was to kill Mo Yuani first, and then fight to the death with the Ghost King Palace Master. But now, it seemed that he had found the wrong target for revenge. Father, don't listen to Mo Yuani's nonsense, he is definitely lying. At this time, Ouyang Lingxie stood up, pointed at Mo Yuani, and said coldly. However, the other martial artists of the Ouyang clan were all silent, clearly shaken. How could Mo Yuani lie in the name of the Mo clan's ancestors? If that was the case, then this person was really worse than a pig or a dog. Sierra, step down first. Ouyang Fu said in a deep voice, signaling Ouyang Lingxie to step down. Although Ouyang Fu didn't dare to be 100% sure of Mo Yuani's words, he was already 70 to 80% convinced. Now, all the suspicious points were concentrated on the Ghost King Palace Master. If he wanted to find out everything, he had to find the Ghost King Palace Master and ask him. At this time, Nie Tian and Feng Biu came to the sky and stood beside Mo Yuani. Nie Tian had basically understood the whole thing, and he could smell a strong conspiracy in the whole incident. It seemed that the Ghost King Palace Master was planning to let the Mo clan and the Ouyang clan fight to the death. And Nie Tian was basically sure that Ouyang Fu's wife and child were most likely killed by the Ghost King Palace Master. Since the Ghost King Palace Master could imprison Rui Qianyu and Tawny, and even cast the remnant heart-soul seal on Rui Zhensu, it was enough to show that he was a vicious person. He would definitely kill his wife and child. Mr. Ouyang, if you want to find out the whole thing, then you have to talk to the Ghost King Palace Master. Nie Tian saw that Ouyang Fu was still hesitating, so he took a step forward and said lightly, Huh! Ouyang Fu did not speak, but Ouyang Lingxie, who was behind him, frowned and looked at Nie Tian with a cold face. He said coldly, Who do you think you are? What right do you have to speak here? Nie Tian frowned and glanced at Ouyang Lingxie. He did not say anything and directly ignored the latter. He had seen too many arrogant people like this, so he was too lazy to pay attention to them. Ouyang Fu looked at Nie Tian deeply, but did not say anything. He then looked at Mo Yuani and said, Mo Yuani, I will definitely investigate what you said just now. If you dare to lie to me, I, Ouyang Fu, swear that I will destroy the entire Mo clan. Let's go. After saying that, Ouyang Fu suddenly turned around and left with the Ouyang clan. Ouyang Lingxie's eyes flashed, and he looked at Nie Tian very sinisterly. he said cold. Brat, I will remember you. Chapter 1670. Seeing that the Ouyang family had left, Mo Yuani let out a long sigh of relief. His tense face relaxed a lot. The crisis of the Mo family was finally resolved. Ouyang Fu left in a rage, hoping that Mo Yuani could find out the truth. Mr. Mo, let's go back first. Nie Tian took a deep breath and smiled faintly. In fact, even if the Mo family and the Ouyang family fought, they might not lose. After all, Feng Biu was still there. With Feng Biu's strength, he might be Ouyang Fu's opponent. Mo Yuani signaled the Mo family's dark guards to hide again. After a while, Nie Tian and the others came to the hall of the Mo family's small courtyard. Mr. Mo, I have something to ask you. Nie Tian looked at Mo Yuani, his eyes flashing. At this time, he had a very bold guess in his mind, but he couldn't be sure. He still needed to confirm something with Mo Yuani. Mr. Nie, please speak. Mo Yuani's attitude toward Nie Tian was very good. He nodded slightly with a smile. Mr. Mo, I want to know how you knew that the Ghost King Palace Master had a way to open the flowing evil sword seal? Nie Tian asked with a smile. Someone told me. Mo Yuani nodded. He didn't know what Nie Tian wanted to ask, so he answered truthfully. Who was that person? Do you remember? Nie Tian asked with a frown. It seemed to be someone from the Ghost King Palace. Mo Yuani frowned and said, It seems that person came to tell me this news. So that's how it is. Nie Tian nodded with a smile. After a moment of pondering, he asked, Mr. Mo, you said that the 3 evil sword seals can only be activated with the help of other cultivators who have already activated the 3 evil sword seals. Is there anyone who doesn't have the 3 evil sword seals who can help others activate them? Never. Mo Yuani shook his head and said, Speaking of which, the Ghost King Palace Master should be the only person who can help others open the sword seal without the 3 evil sword seal. That's not necessarily true. Nie Tian smiled again, but his smile was a bit strange. He looked at Mo Yuani and said, How do you know that the Ghost King Palace Master doesn't have the 3 evil sword seal? Mo Yuani's eyes slightly narrowed. He immediately thought of something and said in astonishment, What Mr. Nie means is that the Ghost King Palace Master is also someone who possesses the 3 evil sword seal. Is that not possible? Nie Tian laughed, a playful look on his face. Mo Yuani took it for granted that the Ghost King Palace Master was a stranger. Of course, he would not think that the latter was someone who possessed the 3 evil sword seal. Mr. Nie. Mo Yuani frowned, his eyes flashing as if he had thought of something. He exclaimed, You mean, the Ghost King Palace Master is from the Sangxi family? A smile appeared on the corner of Nie Tian's mouth as he said, The Ghost King Palace Master framed you because he wanted the Ouyang and Mo clans to fight to the death. If the 2 clans fight to the death and both sides suffer, who would benefit the most? It's the other Sangxi family, the Ji family. This time, Mo Yanwei reacted faster than Mo Yuani. He cried out in shock, his voice trembling. The 3 Evils family was a 3-way feud. If the Mo family and the Ouyang family fought, the Ji family would benefit in the end. Could it be that the Ghost King Palace Master is from the Ji family? After a full 10 seconds, Mo Yuani's stiff expression finally reacted. The shock in his heart was revealed on his face. Nie Tian's conjecture was too shocking. It was completely beyond Mo Yuani's imagination. It had to be said that Nie Tian's thinking was very rigorous. Layer by layer, he peeled off a huge secret. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his eyes calm and deep. Some schemes seem complicated, but as long as you think about who will benefit the most from the success of the scheme, you'll be able to figure out the identity of the mastermind behind it. The Ji family. Mo Yanwei suddenly stood up and roared, No wonder the Ghost King Palace Master can activate the flowing evil sword seal. No wonder he wanted to frame Big Brother. It turns out that he's from the Ji family. Although everything was just Nye Tian's speculation, Mo Yanwei was already convinced. The Ghost King Palace Master. Mo Yuani's face was gloomy as he murmured, "It turns out that ever since I learned that the Ghost King Palace Master can activate the flowing evil sword seal, I've fallen into a huge conspiracy. The Ghost King Palace Master and the Ji family are really scheming." The Ji family of the Three Evils family had disappeared for tens of thousands of years. It turned out that they had infiltrated the Ghost King Palace. "Thank you, Mr. Nye Tian. If it weren't for your words just now, this Mo would still be in the dark." Mo Yuani calmed down and said in a deep voice, his eyes surging with suppressed anger. Being framed, how could Mo Yuani not be angry? But at this time, he could only endure because he didn't have the strength. Even if he knew the truth, he couldn't do anything to the Ghost King Palace Master. "Mr. Mo, I'll go back to my room first. I still have to participate in the Ghost King Challenge tournament tomorrow." Nye Tian looked at Mo Yuani and said lightly. He understood Mo Yuani's anger, but he had no other choice now. Next, the most important thing for Nye Tian was the Ghost King Arena. He would continue to participate in the Ghost King Challenge tournament tomorrow. After returning to his room, Nye Tian immediately sat cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. His spiritual consciousness entered the Star River domain and came to the Starry Sky sword array. He began to carefully feel the flow of the sword intent in his body. In Nye Tian's body, the sword intent was like a warm current, surging in his limbs and meridians, and began to slowly penetrate into his bones. Feeling the nourishment of the sword intent on his bones, Nye Tian's whole body felt indescribably comfortable. As the sword intent slowly penetrated into his bones, his martial body began to change, and the power of the sword intent in his body also became stronger. At this moment, Nye Tian knew that he had begun to advance to the sword bone realm. The next morning, the mottled morning sun shone in the room. Nye Tian's closed eyes suddenly opened, releasing a sharp light. He stood up directly, releasing a powerful sword momentum. His whole body was like an unsheathed sword, dazzling. After a night of cultivation, Nye Tian's sword principle cultivation successfully advanced from the sword vein realm to the sword bone realm. Sensing the surging sword intent in his bones, the corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up into a smile as he muttered to himself, "Very good. Now that my sword art has reached the sword bone stage, my battle prowess has at least doubled." The sword intent entered the bones. This was the sign of the sword bone realm. The improvement in his mastery of sword Dao made him even more confident about his chances in the arena battles against greater gods. He was determined to win the High God Arena battle. Nye Tian did not waste any time. After looking at True Case Rain, he went to the Guiwang City Arena with Feng Bu and Mo Yanwei. After a while, the three arrived at the arena. At this time, the arena was a boiling cauldron of voices. The opening of the High God Arena attracted more spectators. Almost all the people with some strength in the entire Guiwang City came. There were nearly 1 million people in the audience. At this time, there were already 2 martial artists fighting in the High God Arena. Nye Tian glanced at them and saw that one of them was about to lose. His eyes flickered and he was ready to enter the arena. He did not want to waste time. He just wanted to end the High God Arena battle as soon as possible. Just as Nye Tian was about to enter the arena, a familiar voice sounded in his divine sense, "Nye Tian. Gui Shanquan." Nye Tian was stunned and immediately looked to the top of the arena. It was Gui Shanquan who transmitted his voice to him. "Nye Tian, the Palace Master wants to see you." Gui Shanquan looked at Nye Tian and directly transmitted his voice. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression changed. There was no doubt that the Palace Master Gui Shanquan mentioned was the Palace Master of Guiwang. Chapter 1671. The Ghost King Palace Master wants to see me. Nye Tian frowned, his eyes couldn't help but flicker. It happened so suddenly that he was caught off guard. "Nye Tian, are you okay?" Feng Buyu noticed Nye Tian's strange expression and couldn't help but ask. "I'm fine." Nye Tian shook his head slightly and said, "Brother Feng, I want to see someone, please come with me." "See someone?" Feng Buyu screamed. He originally thought that Nye Tian was about to enter the High God arena, but he didn't expect the latter to go see someone at this time. He couldn't help but wonder if this person was very important to Nye Tian that he must see him. "Okay." Feng Buyu didn't think too much about it, nodded with a smile and left with Nye Tian. Nye Tian didn't know why the Ghost King Palace Master wanted to see him at this time, but he was worried that something might happen, so he specially brought Feng Buyu along. After a while, Nye Tian and Feng Buyu came to the inner hall of the arena, where Gui Shanquan was already waiting for them. Gui Shanquan glanced at Feng Buyu. He didn't know the latter, so he didn't stop him. "Mr. Gui, where is the Ghost King Palace Master?" Nye Tian didn't talk nonsense and asked directly. "Ghost King Palace Master." Feng Buyu suddenly looked at Nye Tian and screamed. It turned out that the person Nye Tian wanted to see was the Ghost King Palace Master. "This way please." Gui Shanquan nodded slightly and led Nye Tian to a hidden room. Nye Tian let out a long breath, then no longer hesitated, stepped out, pushed the door open and entered the room. He was very curious about what kind of person the legendary Ghost King Palace Master was. Entering the room, Nye Tian didn't see anyone. The room was empty. There was a restriction in the room, and Nye Tian couldn't sense any martial artist's aura. Just as Nye Tian was wondering, there was a sudden fluctuation in the air, and then a light appeared, gradually condensing into a human figure. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed. Even though he couldn't see the face of the shadowy figure, he knew that it was only a soul doppelganger that had appeared in front of him. The main body of the Ghost King Palace Lord did not come, only a soul avatar appeared. "Lord Palace Master, he is Nye Tian." Although it was only a soul avatar in front of him, Gui Shanquan was extremely respectful and cautious. "I want to speak to him alone," the Ghost King Palace Master said in a deep voice, his voice ethereal and somewhat illusory. "Yes." Gui Shanquan slightly bowed, then turned to Feng Buyu and said, "Let's leave." Feng Buyu frowned as he turned to look at Nye Tian. Even if it was just a soul avatar of the Ghost King Palace Lord, he was still worried about Nye Tian's safety. "Brother Feng, you go out first." Nye Tian nodded with a smile and asked Feng Buyu to wait outside. Since the Ghost King Palace Lord only came with a soul avatar and not his main body, it meant that he didn't want to kill Nye Tian. And it was just a soul avatar. Nye Tian was confident that he could deal with it. Feng Buyu nodded slightly and left with Gui Shanquan, leaving only Nye Tian and the Ghost King Palace Lord in the room. "Are you the martial artist who defeated the Lesser God and Intermediate God Arena Masters?" the Ghost King Palace Lord said in a deep voice, his indifferent eyes looking at Nye Tian, as if looking for something. "Ghost King Palace Lord, you didn't just want to see me to say this, right?" Nye Tian didn't want to waste time on the Ghost King Palace Lord, so he said in a cold voice, "If you have something to say, just say it." The Ghost King Palace Lord imprisoned Rui Qianyu and others, causing Rui Qianyu to be in such a state. Of course, Nye Tian couldn't be polite to this person. But he knew that the shadow in front of him was just a soul avatar. Even if he killed it, it would be useless. Very good, straightforward enough. The Ghost King Palace Lord noticed Nye Tian's hostility, but he wasn't angry. Instead he said, "I want to make a deal with you. As long as you are willing, the Upper God Ring Master is yours. And you can put forward any 3 conditions to me. As long as I can do it, I will promise you." "A deal?" Nye Tian frowned. He didn't expect the Ghost King Palace Lord to want to make a deal with him. Not interested. Nye Tian thought for a moment and cold refused. He only wanted to kill the Ghost King Palace Lord. Why would he make a deal with this person? The Ghost King Palace Lord frowned. He didn't expect Nye Tian to refuse so directly, it was far beyond his expectations. Immediately, the Ghost King Palace Lord calmed down and said, Nye Tian, have you thought about it? As long as you do one thing for me, I can promise you 3 conditions. As long as I can do it, I can promise you. Is that so? Nye Tianling smiled coldly and said, What if I want you to let go of Rui Qianyu? The Ghost King Palace Lord suddenly froze, his eyes obviously trembled. He didn't expect Nye Tian to mention the name Rui Qianyu. He had already heard that Nye Tian took away Rui Qianyu, and also learned some news about Nye Tian from Rui Qianyu. It was because he had a certain understanding of Nye Tian that the Ghost King Palace Lord decided to make a deal with Nye Tian. Although Nye Tian took away Rui Qianyu, the latter was hit by the remnant heart-soul seal curse and couldn't say anything to Nye Tian. So the Ghost King Palace Lord pretended to be confused and deliberately didn't mention Rui Qianyu and Rui Qianyu. He thought that Nye Tian didn't know anything. He didn't expect that Nye Tian already knew everything from Gui Shangquan. It seems that you already know. The Ghost King Palace Lord's eyes became gloomy and said, Since Rui Qianyu is in my hands, do you think you still have a chance to refuse? You won't kill Rui Qianyu, at least not now. Nye Tianling said coldly, With your strength, what you covet is not Rui Qianyu's appearance, but her 9-color pupils, right? Regarding the Ghost King Palace Lord, Nye Tian had heard a little. This person married so many wives, but they all died not long after. There must be something fishy about it. How could a person who married so many women really be tempted by one person? So what the Ghost King Palace Lord wanted was not Rui Qianyu, but the 9-color pupils. There must be another reason why the Ghost King Palace Lord didn't do anything to Rui Qianyu. You're smarter than I thought, Nye Tian said. The Ghost King Palace Lord frowned, thought for a moment and said, Change your condition. Other than letting Rui Qianyu go, I can agree to any other condition. I'm not interested in any other condition. Nye Tianling smiled coldly and refused directly. The Ghost King Palace Lord's eyes trembled. Nye Tian was much more difficult to deal with than he thought. Ghost King Palace Lord, if there's nothing else, I won't keep you company. Nye Tianling said indifferently. There was no point in staying any longer, so he left. The Ghost King Palace Lord looked at Nye Tian's back and was stunned on the spot. Slowly, his eyes surged with a strong killing intent. After Nye Tian left, a figure walked out of the inner room of the room, with an evil look in his eyes. If Nye Tian saw this face, he would be shocked. This person was none other than Ouyang clan's member, Ouyang Lingxie. Master, what should we do? Ouyang Lingxie bowed and asked. His voice was filled with killing intent. He was the adopted son of Ouyang clan's master, Ouyang Fu, but now he called the Ghost King Palace Lord Master. Ouyang Lingxie, on the surface, was Ouyang Fu's adopted son, but his real identity was a spy placed by the Ghost King Palace Lord beside Ouyang Fu. Chapter 1672. Nye Tian left the inner hall of the arena with a puzzled look on his face. He seemed to be thinking about something. He was very surprised that the Ghost King Palace Master wanted to meet him. It was even more unexpected that the Ghost King Palace Master wanted to cooperate with him. The Ghost King Palace Master already knew about the relationship between Nye Tian and Rui Qianyu, but he still wanted to cooperate with him. This undoubtedly showed that what he wanted Nye Tian to do was very important to him. Nye Tian had killed a warrior named Qing Qi, who was a personal disciple of the Ghost King Palace Master. The fact that the Ghost King Palace Master was willing to let go of his disciple's murder was enough to show the importance of that matter to him. At this time, Nye Tian suddenly thought of Sun Luo Temple Master. His eyes couldn't help but tremble. He murmured in his heart, Sun Luo Temple Master, Ghost King Palace Master, 2 top experts of Sun Luo Ghost Domain, both want to make a deal with me. This is definitely not a coincidence. Neither of them clearly said what they want me to do. Maybe they want me to do the same thing. Nie Tian's face couldn't help but change as he thought of this. In order to make a deal with Nie Tian, Sun Luo Temple Master promised to save people for him. In order to make a deal with Nie Tian, Ghost King Palace Master put down his disciple's murder and disregarded the relationship between Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu. Both of them paid a great price just to have Nie Tian do one thing for them. Therefore, no matter what the matter was, it was of utmost importance to Sun Luo Temple Master and Ghost King Palace Master. Nie Tian, what are you thinking about? Feng Bu saw Nie Tian's frown and couldn't help but ask puzzledly. Nothing. Nie Tian smiled faintly and stopped thinking about other things. The most important thing at the moment was the High God Challenge tournament. Returning to the martial arena, two martial warriors were currently engaged in an intense battle on the stage. Those two warriors were both very strong. They were both at the peak of the High God stage. The battle was very intense. Boom! In the middle of the arena, two fist shadows heavily bombarded each other, emitting a violent explosion in the air. Two figures flew out at the same time. While they were still in the air, they spat out blood. The two of them landed on the stage and glared at each other, but they didn't attack again. In the end, the two martial artists ended in a draw and left the arena at the same time. Both of them knew that if they continued to fight, even if one of them managed to win, it would be impossible for them to continue fighting. It would be better for them to end in a draw. Boom! Just as the two of them left, a figure directly landed on the stage. Like a boulder falling to the ground, the entire arena shook. Someone's going up the stage again. When the crowd saw the figure on the stage, they couldn't help but exclaim. As long as there was someone on the stage, it meant that there was going to be a battle. In the next moment, another figure descended like a sharp sword, landing on the arena with a sharp glint. It's that guy! The crowd couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the silver-haired figure. Their eyes were trembling. No one expected that the person who appeared on the stage at this moment was actually Nie Tian. Yesterday, Nie Tian had just defeated a mid-god arena lord and had become a legend. No one had ever defeated two arena lords at the same time. But now, Nie Tian actually appeared on the High God arena again. This was very frightening. Is this kid crazy? Could it be that he wants to challenge a High God arena lord? The crowd's eyes were trembling. The shock in their hearts was expressed on their faces. Nie Tian had the strength of a late-stage mid-god. It was normal for him to challenge a low-god and a mid-god arena lord. If he were to challenge a high-god arena lord, that would be too crazy. Although many people had seen the scene of Nie Tian instantly killing Qing Qi, he had only killed Qing Qi at that time. If he were to ascend to the high god arena, it would mean that he would have to defeat at least 20 high god martial artists. Moreover, he would have to face a tyrannical high god arena lord. Was this something that a mid-god martial artist could do? Even if Nie Tian's monstrous talent was obvious to all, no one believed that Nie Tian had such strength. On the stage, the martial artist opposite to Nie Tian sneered. He did not take Nie Tian seriously at all. A kid with the strength of a mid-god. Are you here to die? Make your move. Nie Tian did not waste any time. He spoke in a cold manner. His eyes were cold and piercing. Feeling the coldness from Nie Tian, the martial artist's eyes trembled. His eyes revealed unconcealable fear. Brat, you asked for it. But he was, after all, an apex high god martial artist. He immediately calmed down. With a low roar, he directly punched. Nie Tian's eyes were as calm as still water. He did not even look at the martial artist. The corners of his mouth suddenly curled up and he directly stabbed with his sword. Boom! The sword essence gushed out, swift and fierce like the wind. It directly blasted towards the martial artist. The martial artist did not even have the chance to react. When the sword swept past, one of his arms was directly cut off. Immediately, blood spurted out. Ah! My arm! The next moment, the martial artist let out a tragic roar. The look in his eyes when he looked at Nye Tian was even more fearful and fearful. The sudden scene made everyone's expression stagnate and their eyes tremble. No one had expected that Nye Tian's strength would be so terrifying. With a casual sword strike, he crippled an apex high god martial artist. The gap of a major realm seemed to be negligible for Nye Tian. Everyone could tell that Nye Tian had only casually struck out with his sword earlier. He had not been serious at all. Otherwise, that martial artist would not have survived. What a terrifying sword strike! His battle strength has improved a lot since yesterday. Feng Bu stared at Nye Tian from the spectator's stand and could not help but exclaim, "Yes." Mo Yanwei nodded. His eyes flickered and he said, "His swordsmanship realm has improved. His current battle strength is several times stronger than yesterday." Mo Yanwei was a swordsman. He had rarely seen a swordsman's swordsmanship realm improve so quickly. Speaking of which, Nye Tian's talent in swordsmanship was not very high. At least, compared to swordsmen like Mo Ihan who were born with powerful sword seals, he was much weaker. However, Nye Tian's ability to comprehend swordsmanship was very strong. He was even more terrifying than many swordsmen who were born with powerful sword seals. "Get lost." Nye Tian swept a glance at the martial artist and said, "Get lost." "I'll get lost, I'll get lost," the martial artist nodded repeatedly. He did not dare to stay any longer and immediately left the arena. In the first high god battle, Nye Tian was extremely domineering in order to intimidate his challengers. The following battles were very easy. Nye Tian once again won 19 battles in a row. All his opponents were defeated with one sword strike. Facing these apex high god experts, Nye Tian had to use his sword, but he only needed one sword strike. The improvement of his swordsmanship realm had made a qualitative leap in his battle strength. It was effortless for him to fight against ordinary apex high god experts. The crowd's gazes trembled. They all stared at Nye Tian, hoping that his next opponent would be stronger. At least, he would not be defeated with one sword strike. Boom! At this moment, a sword essence suddenly soared through the air and directly attacked Nye Tian. What a fierce sword essence! Nye Tian sensed that something was wrong. He roared in his heart and immediately thrust his sword forward to receive the sword essence. Chapter 1673. It's you. In the arena, when Nye Tian saw the face that appeared in front of him, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes and growl. He had never thought that his last opponent would be Ouyang Lingxie. Ouyang Lingxie was a swordsman who had activated the 9 evil sword seal. "That's right, it's me," Ouyang Lingxie said coldly. His eyes were filled with extreme murderous intent. The sword aura around his body surged and spread in all directions. So powerful! The crowd could not help but tremble when they felt Ouyang Lingxie's sword aura. They became fearful. Ouyang Lingxie's aura was very powerful. Even from several tens of thousands of meters away, the crowd could still feel the pressure. Why is it this guy? Mo Yanwei could not help but tremble when he saw that Nye Tian's opponent was Ouyang Lingxie. What's wrong? Is this person very powerful? Feng Bu did not care. He said indifferently, "Isn't this guy from the Ouyang family? Why is he here?" "Brother Feng, this person is Ouyang Lingxie. He's Ouyang Fu's adopted son. He's also one of the few people in the Ouyang family who has activated the 9 evil sword seal," Mo Yanwei said grimly. He could not help but become worried. He had heard that Ouyang Lingxie had activated the 9 evil sword seal with his own strength and was known as the greatest genius of the Ouyang family in the past 10,000 years. It was exactly because of this that Ouyang Fu had adopted Ouyang Lingxie. He even planned to make Ouyang Lingxie the next patriarch of the Ouyang family. Ouyang Lingxie was not very old. He seemed to be less than 1,000 years old, but his strength had already reached late high god. His way of the sword had also reached sword essence, far surpassing other swordsmen of the same generation. The most terrifying thing was that Ouyang Lingxie possessed the 9 evil sword seal. If he activated it, his battle prowess would probably be on par with an early overgod. Without a doubt, Ouyang Lingxie was definitely a formidable opponent. Mo Yanwei was also very confused as to why Ouyang Lingxie would appear here. Of course, he did not know Ouyang Lingxie's true identity. Ouyang Lingxie did not activate the 9 evil sword seal with his own strength. Instead, the palace master had helped him activate it. Ouyang Lingxie was only a pawn of the palace master who had been placed beside Ouyang Fu. At this moment, the sounds of swords colliding resounded ceaselessly on the arena. "I'm surprised that you're here," Nie Tian said coldly as he looked at Ouyang Lingxie with a burning gaze. Ouyang Lingxie sneered and said, "You killed Ouyang Can, so I will avenge him. What's wrong with that?" "Revenge? That's a good reason." Nie Tian laughed, but his eyes were filled with disdain. He did not believe that Ouyang Lingxie was here to avenge Ouyang Can, cut the crap and die. Ouyang Lingxie's eyes darkened. Without any hesitation, he struck out with his sword. The evil and sharp sword shadow was like a black snake that rolled toward Nie Tian. What a terrifying sword intent! When Nie Tian sensed Ouyang Lingxie's sword will, he was shocked. Ouyang Lingxie's sword will was cold and it contained an evil chill. It was extremely oppressive. Nie Tian didn't dare to be careless. He slashed out with his sword, and the sword intent in his body burst out. A majestic sword shadow went forward. Boom! When the two swords collided, the two sword shadows shattered at the same time. Boundless sword intent spread out, wreaking havoc in the air. However, in the next moment, Nie Tian felt a frigid sword aura bearing down on him and infiltrating his body. Immediately afterwards, an evil frigid aura spread out in all directions, as if to freeze even his nascent meridians and godhead. Nie Tian frowned. His 9 yuan meridians spun madly, and Devil Yuan released a terrifying force to force the evil chill out of his body. His figure flickered, and he retreated several hundred meters away. When he steadied himself, there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Ouyang Lingxie's sword will was extremely strange. The evil chill in his sword will was extremely terrifying. It could actually invade a cultivator's body and freeze their yuan meridians. Fortunately, Nie Tian had the supreme dragon bloodline, which had a certain resistance against the evil chill. Otherwise, if his yuan meridians were frozen, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Smelly brat, your strength is not bad, but that's all you can do," Ouyang Lingxie exclaimed in surprise when he saw that Nie Tian wasn't injured. Then, he sneered, "My 9 evil cold chi can freeze a cultivator's martial physique. I want to see how long you can last." The 9 evil sword seal was terrifying because it contained the 9 evil cold chi. This kind of power could freeze a cultivator's meridians, bones, and even their martial physique. Other than a few special martial physiques, very few people could resist the invasion of the 9 evil cold chi. Ouyang Lingxie's silhouette flickered, and he stabbed out with his sword again. Instantly, several 9 evil sword shadows appeared, and they flew towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned as he felt the terrifying cold chi rushing towards him. It was as if the space around him was going to freeze. Boom! Nie Tian raised his long sword, and a blazing flame appeared on the tip of the sword. This was the Chaos Flame. He directly stabbed out, and a burning sword shadow flew out. Rumble! The sword shadows collided and the space shook. 2 terrifying sword essences collided, and an ear-piercing sound was heard. How powerful! Seeing this scene, the crowd's eyes couldn't help but tremble as they exclaimed in their hearts. Mo Yanwei frowned, and he was very worried about Nie Tian. Feng Bu also realized how terrifying Ouyang Lingxie was, and his face became slightly worried. In the sky above the arena, Nie Tian flapped his wings and retreated for another 1,000 meters. His eyes couldn't help but flicker. Ouyang Lingxie was very powerful, and he was even more terrifying than Dugu and I. Fortunately, Nye Tian's swordsmanship realm had improved. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to resist the terrifying 9 evil cold chi. Ouyang Lingxie was a late-stage high god, and his swordsmanship was at the sword essence realm. Both his strength and realm were a realm higher than Nye Tian's, and his swordsmanship was, of course, stronger than Nye Tian's. Then, the two continued to fight. With the help of the chaotic flame, Nye Tian could still resist Ouyang Lingxie, but he was already at a disadvantage. "Brat, is this all you've got? You're too weak." Ouyang Lingxie attacked wildly, and Nye Tian was forced to retreat. He became very arrogant. Sword sealing forbidden array, sword dragon engulfs the world. Nye Tian frowned, and his blood chi and sword essences surged. Countless runes of the forbidden array gushed out and gathered in an instant. Then, a sword dragon whizzed out and attacked Ouyang Lingxie. Ouyang Lingxie could feel the power of the sword, and he couldn't help but frown. Then, he released his cold chi and froze the space around him. Bang! The next moment, the sword dragon collided with Ouyang Lingxie, but there was a muffled sound. It was as if the sword dragon had collided with a huge iceberg, and its huge body suddenly collapsed. However, the cold chi barrier around Ouyang Lingxie also cracked, and he was forced to retreat for a few hundred meters. For the first time, Nye Tian had forced Ouyang Lingxie to retreat. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Nye Tian's body suddenly moved, and the sword aura around him was released. At the same time, a majestic star power was released, and a huge star soul armor covered his body. Ouyang Lingxie felt that Nye Tian's aura had suddenly become stronger, and he couldn't help but look at him. Then, he said coldly, "Is this your real strength? In that case, you are worthy of me activating the 9 evil sword seal." Chapter 1674. In the air above the arena, Ouyang Lingxie's body emitted a vast and boundless cold chi. A terrifying sword will surged in the air, as if it wanted to freeze the space. 9 evil sword seal. Nye Tian felt that Ouyang Lingxie's chi had suddenly increased. He couldn't help but frown and exclaim in his heart. He felt that there was an extremely terrifying power surging in Ouyang Lingxie's body. It was as if there was a wild beast roaring in his body. Waves of cold chi were like terrifying tentacles, spreading in the air. The air became dark and heavy, and the cold chi emitted a chilling aura. Nye Tian felt that the cold chi in the air was oppressive. It could actually penetrate through his star soul armor, as if it wanted to invade his body. After Ouyang Lingxie released the 9 evil sword seal, the invading power of the 9 evil cold chi became even more terrifying. "Little brat, it is your honor to die under the 9 evil sword seal." Ouyang Lingxie's chi surged, and his eyes became even more evil. Even his voice was filled with coldness. "Is that so?" Nye Tianling laughed. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strong desire to fight. "I will take your life with this sword." Ouyang Lingxie roared. His body moved, and a sword shadow rushed towards Yifutian. Instantly, the space became stagnant. The sword shadow passed by, leaving a trail of cold chi behind. Nye Tian felt the terrifying cold chi in the air. His eyes flashed, and he immediately swung his sword. The surging sword will was infused with the vast power of the star soul. Boom! When he swung his sword, what whistled out was not a sword shadow, but a huge fireball. It was like a fire dragon rolling out. For this attack, Nye Tian used the Starry Sky ancient martial arts Starry Sea burning star flames. He wanted to test if the fusion of the star soul and the thunderbolt sword will could suppress the 9 evil cold chi. Kaboom! In the next moment, the two forces collided in the air. Instantly, the ice and fire chi exploded, and the space was filled with the glow of the ice and the fire. It was extremely strange. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian felt a wave of cold energy fiercely rushing towards him. Caught off guard, the dreadful 9 evils cold chi rushed into his body. However, he reacted quickly. The 9 dragon veins revolved and a deep dragon roar came from his body, forcing the 9 evil chill out of his body. That was close. Tian frowned and steadied himself. He felt that the 9 evil cold chi had become even more terrifying. If he hadn't reacted fast enough, the cold chi that had rushed into his body would have been enough to freeze all the meridians in his body. Ouyang Lingxie was much stronger than Tian in all aspects. Tian's advantage was that he had more sword wills and a stronger martial body. Ouyang Lingxie's eyes were not filled with joy when he forced Tian back with his sword. Instead, he was shocked. He did not expect Tian to be able to block his sword even after he had activated the 9 evil sword seal. Bastard, your strength is beyond my expectations, but that's all there is to it. The next moment, Ouyang Lingxie's eyes were filled with determination. He said coldly, "This battle is over." Ouyang Lingxie realized that Tian was a strong opponent since he did not manage to kill Tian with his sword. He felt a sense of danger from Tian, so he was even more determined to kill him. Boom! Ouyang Lingxie raised the long sword in his hand. A sword aura shot into the sky like a giant dragon. It was like a pillar that stood between the heavens and the earth. How terrifying! When the crowd saw this, their faces darkened and they shouted. They could feel the cold air in the air. It was terrifying. Are you going to risk it all? Tian looked at Ouyang Lingxie and knew that he was going to use his strongest move. However, Tian was hesitating. He was not sure if he should use the 3 forbidden skills. He was confident that if he used the 3 forbidden skills, he would be able to kill Ouyang Lingxie in a second. However, he did not want to do so because there was still a High God Ring Master waiting for him. Bastard, die! At this moment, Ouyang Lingxie roared and slashed down with his sword. The giant sword shadow was like an ice mountain, pressing down on Tian. Crack! 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 In an instant, the space was frozen, and there was a terrible tearing sound. Tian frowned slightly. The power of Ouyang Lingxie's sword was beyond his expectations. Even if he wanted to use the 3 forbidden skills now, it was too late. At this critical moment, Tian did not panic. The blood chi in his body surged, and the sword chi was like a wind blade, tearing the frozen space around him. Then, he stabbed out with his sword. The star soul flame on the sword was released, and a terrible blood-colored sword shadow appeared. There were blazing flames surging on it, and its momentum was magnificent. At this moment, everyone held their breath and opened their eyes wide. They did not dare to blink, for fear that they would miss the most exciting scene. Boom! In the void, under the watchful eyes of countless people, the giant ice sword and the giant flame sword collided. There was a loud explosion, and at the center of the collision, a rolling wave of ice and fire spread out. The momentum was surging, sweeping everything in its path. Chi chi chi. The cold chi and the flaming sword fought, collided, and swallowed each other. The whole space was filled with sword chi, blood chi, cold chi, and flames. These two people are so terrifying. The crowd looked at the terrifying scene in the air, and their eyes trembled as they exclaimed in their hearts. The intensity of this battle was beyond everyone's expectations. Boom! At this moment, the two swords in the air finally could not withstand it anymore. Almost at the same time, they exploded, and countless sword shadows wreaked havoc in the space. Tian and Ouyang Lingxie retreated at the same time, and stood in the air, staring at each other with cold eyes. So close. Tian frowned, and a trace of blood could be seen at the corner of his mouth. But in his heart, he heaved a sigh of relief. The collision just now was too dangerous for him. He had underestimated Ouyang Lingxie's strength, and almost failed miserably. Fortunately, the star soul flame had a suppressive effect on the 9 evil force. Therefore, Tian was able to withstand Ouyang Lingxie's sword. But even so, he was still slightly injured. The 9 evil sword seal was indeed terrifying. It increased Ouyang Lingxie's strength by several times. How is this possible? Ouyang Lingxie had injured Nie Tian with one strike, but his face was extremely gloomy. He had used all his strength in that strike just now. Originally, he thought that he could kill Nie Tian instantly, but he did not expect that he could not even injure Nie Tian. Ouyang Lingxie could not believe that the person standing in front of him was really a late-stage middle deity. The 9 evil sword seal is indeed terrifying, but you are too weak. You can't unleash the full power of the 9 evil sword seal. Nie Tian became cold, and he sneered. Then, his face turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, "Next, it's time for me to use my sword." The 9 evil sword seal was powerful, but Ouyang Lingxie was too weak. Chapter 1675. Without any hesitation, Nie Tian activated the Dragon Mark Talisman. Strange dragon-shaped runes surged out and his aura skyrocketed. Ouyang Lingxie suddenly sensed that Nie Tian's aura was skyrocketing. Even his strength had improved. Ouyang Lingxie's face stiffened and he was speechless. With the activation of the Dragon Mark Talisman, Nie Tian's strength skyrocketed from the late stage of mid-god to the early stage of high god. He only activated the Dragon Mark Talisman and did not use the Taboo Dragon Bloodline or Taboo Dragon Soulbone. He felt that the Dragon Mark Talisman was enough to deal with Ouyang Lingxie. It's that rune power again. When Mo Yanwei saw the terrifying magical symbols around Nie Tian, his eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he cried out in alarm. What a strange rune. It can actually enhance Nie Tian's strength. Feng Biu frowned as he sensed that Nie Tian's body was improving. He was puzzled. He had seen many rune formations, but he had never seen such a terrifying rune power like Nie Tian's. Nie Tian, how much strength have you been hiding? Feng Biu smiled bitterly in his heart. He finally realized that his worry for Nie Tian was unnecessary. On the arena, Nie Tian activated the Dragon Mark Talisman with all his strength. A cold smile appeared on his face. He stared at Ouyang Lingxie and said, "It's time to end this battle." As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Tian raised the longsword in his hand. 2 terrifying flames surged on the blade and magically fused together. The power of the chaotic flame and the star soul flame, coupled with the power of the Dragon Mark Talisman, is enough to kill you. Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. The forbidden move of the proud sword skill, the third move of the 3 strokes of annihilation, blood devours the firmament. Nie Tian let out a bellow. His flesh aura and sword intent surged madly as he slashed his sword down towards Ouyang Lingxie. Boom! Blood chi, sword intent, primal chaos flame, astral soul flame, these 4 terrifying energies fused together as a blood-colored sword shadow that was blazing with flames shot out, resembling a fire dragon that shook the heavens, exuding a tyrannical aura. Seeing this, Ouyang Lingxie's eyes trembled. He then released the 9 evils cold chi from his body and enveloped him within a radius of a few thousand meters. Boom! In the next moment, the giant flaming sword bombarded the frozen space. It was as if it had collided with an iceberg, and the huge sword suddenly stopped. Crack! Crack, crack, crack! Almost at the same time, a crisp sound was heard, and a huge crack appeared in the frozen space. Immediately after, the 9 evils cold chi around Ouyang Lingxie started to crumble, and the great flaming sword came crashing down on him. No. All of a sudden, Ouyang Lingxie felt a real killing intent. He screamed in agony, and his voice became shrill and piercing. Never had he imagined that Nie Tian's strength would actually be so formidable, and it far exceeded his expectations. Only now did he realize that he was no match for Nie Tian. However, it was too late for him to realize this. Pust, pust, pust. The great flaming sword slammed towards him, breaking through the 9 evils cold chi. An ear-piercing sound could be heard in the air, and it sounded like a death knell from hell to Ouyang Lingxie's ears. If Nie Tian's ultimate attack landed, Ouyang Lingxie would definitely die. "Don't kill him!" At the moment when Ouyang Lingxie was about to die, a low voice suddenly sounded in Nye Tian's mind, and it sounded extremely nervous. At this moment, someone actually transmitted a message to him. When Nye Tian heard this voice, he couldn't help but frown. Immediately after, his aura suddenly weakened, and he withdrew the long sword in his hand. The great flaming sword shadow in the air suddenly weakened. Boom! In the next moment, the great flaming sword shadow bombarded Ouyang Lingxie's body, and he was sent flying. However, he immediately stabilized his body in midair. Because Nye Tian had suddenly withdrawn his attack, the great flaming sword shadow's power was greatly reduced, and Ouyang Lingxie was not seriously injured. Mr. Ouyang. Nye Tian's figure stood in midair, and he suddenly lifted his head to look at a figure, and calmly called out. The person who appeared at this critical moment was none other than the head of the Ouyang family, Ouyang Fu. Nye Tian heard Ouyang Fu's voice, and that was why he suddenly withdrew his attack. Thank you, young man. Ouyang Fu stabilized his body, and when he saw that Ouyang Lingxie was fine, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, and his expression became much more relaxed. As soon as he arrived, he saw the scene of Ouyang Fu's death. He wanted to help, but it was too late, and he could only transmit his voice. He didn't expect Nye Tian to really stop when he heard his voice. Mr. Ouyang, you're too kind. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He knew what had happened to Ouyang Fu, and he felt that the latter was a tragic person, so he was willing to give him face. Father. Ouyang Lingxie was still in shock, and he took a few deep breaths before he looked at Ouyang Fu. His eyes couldn't help but flicker, and he spoke in shock. He obviously didn't expect Ouyang Fu to suddenly appear here. Sire, I'm glad that you're fine. Ouyang Fu nodded with a smile, and he couldn't hide the love in his eyes. His wife and son had died a tragic death, and he only had one son, Ouyang Lingxie. He treated Ouyang Lingxie like his own son, and he loved him even more than his own son. He had completely made up for what he owed his wife and son to Ouyang Lingxie. If Ouyang Lingxie died, Ouyang Fu would really go crazy. He really didn't want to experience the pain of losing his beloved son again. Father, I only wanted to avenge Ouyang Can, so… Ouyang Lingxie immediately calmed down and he bowed slightly, as if he was very guilty. Sire, don't say any more. I know everything. Ouyang Fu nodded lightly, then looked at Nye Tian and said, Young man, thank you for not killing Sire. The Ouyang family will not pursue what happened to Ouyang Can, okay. Nye Tian nodded slightly and he retracted his aura. He glanced at Ouyang Lingxie, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. He clearly saw that when Ouyang Lingxie first saw Ouyang Fu, he didn't show joy, but fear. To be more precise, he had a guilty conscience. Logically speaking, when Ouyang Fu appeared, Ouyang Lingxie should be very happy. Why was he afraid? He was here to avenge Ouyang Can, and there was nothing to be nervous about. Why did he have a guilty conscience? Ouyang Lingxie, you must have something to tell Ouyang Fu. Nye Tian thought to himself, and then he looked away from Ouyang Lingxie. Ouyang Fu doted on Ouyang Lingxie too much, as if he could only see the latter's good points, and not his bad points. Ouyang Fu wouldn't doubt anything that Ouyang Lingxie said. Sire, let's go. Ouyang Fu looked at Ouyang Lingxie and said calmly. Ouyang Lingxie looked at Nye Tian, and although he was very unwilling, he moved to Ouyang Fu's side, and was ready to leave. Mr. Ouyang. At that moment, Nye Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at Ouyang Fu. He sent a voice transmission to Ouyang Fu and said, Mr. Mo has something to talk to you about. Can you come to the Mo family's courtyard tonight? Ouyang Fu's eyes darkened, and after thinking for a while, he nodded and agreed. The Ouyang father and son didn't stay any longer, and they left immediately. Nye Tian looked at the two of them, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. He thought to himself, Ouyang Fu, it's not Mo Yuani who wants to talk to you, it's me who wants to talk to you about something. Chapter 1676. Nie Tian defeated Ouyang Lingxie and won his 20th battle. Next, he would fight against the superior god Ring Lord. After a while, a figure appeared in the sky above the ring. He descended directly, and his aura was surging like the mountains and the sea. Superior god Ring Lord. The crowd saw the figure and couldn't help but exclaim. Without a doubt, this person was the superior god Ring Lord of the Ghost King Palace. Nie Tian looked at the person and felt his aura, but he smiled faintly. This person was different from the previous two Ring Lords. He didn't have the residual heart-soul seal curse in his body. He was a normal warrior. At this moment, the person stepped forward and came to a place less than 100 meters away from Nie Tian. He stood there, and his eyes under the ghost mask flashed with a cold light. He said coldly, "Did you kill junior brother Qin Qi?" "So what?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, and then nodded with a smile. His posture was extremely provocative. This person addressed Qin Qi as junior brother. It seemed that he was also a disciple of the Ghost King Palace Lord. Looking at his aura, his combat power was even more terrifying than Qin Qi's. "If that's the case, then you will pay with your life for junior brother Qin Qi." The man's eyes trembled slightly as he spoke coldly. His voice was filled with extreme coldness and overbearingness. Nie Tian looked at the person and seemed to notice something. He immediately used his divine sense to cover the person. His face couldn't help but change, and he exclaimed in his heart, "What a terrifying sword intent!" He found that there was an extremely terrifying sword intent surging in the body of the Ghost Mask warrior. The aura was very terrifying, even more terrifying than Ouyang Lingxie's. "This is..." At the same time, Fat Cat's voice also sounded. She took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, "The evil woman's sword seal." "The evil woman's sword seal?" Nie Tian suddenly froze, and immediately realized that the person in front of him was from the Ji family, one of the three evils families. The three evils sword seals were the flowing evil sword seal, the 9 evils sword seal, and the evil woman sword seal. Nie Tian had seen the flowing evil sword seal and the 9 evil sword seal, but he had never seen the evil woman sword seal. "Nie Tian, you must be careful. This person's laws of the sword have reached sword essence, but the evil woman's sword seal is extremely terrifying. His true battle prowess is definitely on par with early overgods." Fat Cat was much calmer now. She warned Nie Tian sternly. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded slightly and his eyes became firm. This Ji clan swordsman's strength was at the peak of the high god stage. His sword cultivation had reached the sword essence realm. Coupled with the evil woman's sword seal, his battle prowess was unimaginable. This person was a member of Ji family and was also the disciple of Ghost King Palace Master. This undoubtedly proved that Ghost King Palace Master was a member of Ji family. Nie Tian's guess was right. The person in front of him was a member of the Sangxi clan, Ji clan. His name was Ji Wushang. "Young lad, your strength is indeed not bad. You were able to defeat Ouyang Lingxie." At this moment, Ji Wushang's cold eyes trembled slightly, and then revealed a deep viciousness. He said coldly, "Unfortunately, your current opponent is me. I'll take your life with one strike." Nie Tian had witnessed the entire battle between Ouyang Lingxie and Nie Tian. He had to admit that Nie Tian's strength had indeed surprised him, but he didn't take Nie Tian seriously because of that. He was confident that if he encountered an opponent like Ouyang Lingxie, he could kill him with one strike. As for Nie Tian, he was also confident that he could kill him with one strike. "Is that so?" Nie Tian's face darkened slightly, but the corner of his mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Ouyang Lingxie had said the same thing before, but in the end, he was defeated by Nie Tian. If Ouyang Fu hadn't arrived in time, he would have died in Nie Tian's hands. Nie Tian knew that Ji Wushang was stronger than Ouyang Lingxie, but he, Nie Tian, wasn't a pushover. Kill! Ji Wushang sensed the disdain in Ye Tian's eyes and couldn't help but roar in anger. His figure moved, and the primordial spiritual sword suddenly stabbed out. In the next moment, a strange scene happened. Several sword shadows appeared in the void, as if they had appeared at the same time, and they all rushed toward Nye Tian. Such incredible speed! Nye Tian was taken aback as he exclaimed inwardly. Ji Wushang's sword left several sword shadows in the air. It wasn't a lot of sword shadows, but a single sword shadow that was extremely fast. Nye Tian had only seen such a fast speed from one person before, and that was Luo Xian. However, Luo Xian relied on the Thousand Clouds barrier to change the flow of time, while Ji Wushang relied on nothing but pure speed to achieve such a fast speed. This was an essential difference. Nye Tian didn't expect Ji Wushang to be so fast. In a hurry, he struck out with his sword and activated the extreme wind firmament armor. Boom! In midair, the two sword shadows collided, and one of the sword shadows shattered. Then, a murderous sword intent came crashing down on Nye Tian. Bang! The sword intent fell, and with a muffled sound, the extreme wind firmament armor on Nye Tian's body shattered, and he was sent flying like a kite with a broken string, leaving a bloody trail in the air. This! The crowd couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene, and their eyes trembled. Everyone saw how terrifying Nye Tian was, but he couldn't even take one sword strike from Ji Wushang. This was too outrageous. Nye Tian. In the spectator stands, Feng Buyu and Mo Yanwei couldn't help but exclaim in unison when they saw Nye Tian being sent flying by a sword strike. Ji Wushang looked at the bloody trail in the air, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He spoke in a cold tone, full of arrogance. However, before the sound of his voice faded, the blood in the air abruptly stopped. Following which, a pair of 100-meter-long astral soul wings unfurled, and Nye Tian's body stabilized as he hovered in midair. Right now, Nye Tian was covered in blood, looking extremely terrifying. However, the severity of his aura didn't decrease at all. He let out a long breath and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. He smiled bitterly. The evil woman's sword seal is truly terrifying. The sword strike just now was too fast, and Nye Tian couldn't react in time. He could only act hastily. Fortunately, he activated the extreme wind firmament armor, which helped him block the majority of the sword intense impact. Coupled with his powerful martial physique, which was comparable to a lord god, he was able to withstand this fatal strike. Nye Tian's body shook, and the blood on his body was cleansed. His sword aura surged around him, and his battle intent surged. Ji Wushang was a good opponent, and Nye Tian liked powerful and arrogant opponents like him. Ji Wushang couldn't help but be astonished when he saw that Nye Tian was still alive. Moreover, his aura was steady and imposing. The sword strike just now was extremely powerful, enough to heavily injure an early overgod. Nye Tian was only a late mid-god, so how could he withstand it? The crowd was stunned. Only now did they return to their senses, and their eyes immediately burned with passion. Nye Tian's strength was strange. It would be unbelievable if Ji Wushang really killed him in a single strike. Chapter 1677. Above the stage, Nye Tian didn't hesitate to unleash the 3 forbidden runes. His aura soared. This rune again. The crowd was startled. This was Nye Tian's 3rd time using the power of the forbidden runes. This time, Nye Tian activated the 3 forbidden talismans at the same time, and his strength began to skyrocket. What kind of power is this? It can actually increase my strength in an instant? Ji Wushang had seen Nye Tian's talisman power before, so when he saw it again, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. Is there a need for you to know? Nye Tianlin coldly replied. His body was shrouded by the runes and his eyes became sharp. Arrogant! Ji Wushang let out a bellow and actually launched an attack. The 7 shadows of invincibility thrust out, creating a vortex of sword intent that rapidly expanded and pressed down on Nie Tian. Ji Wushang sensed that Nie Tian's strength was rapidly increasing, so he wanted to make a move before Nie Tian's strength reached its peak. Nie Tian's expression sank as he sensed the terrifying pressure from the sword vortex. The forbidden runes around his body surged as he charged toward the sword vortex. Rumble! In the next second, the sword vortex slammed into the forbidden runes, causing an endless force to explode and wreak havoc in the air. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a terrifying force pressing down on him as if it wanted to tear his body apart. Ah! In the blink of an eye, pain spread throughout his body. Nie Tian could feel the violent force attacking his body. The pain was unbearable and he couldn't help but scream. Fool! Ji Wushang couldn't help but laugh at this scene. The sword vortex is condensed from the power of the evil woman's sword seal. The power contained inside is unimaginable. Trying to resist the evil woman's sword seal with mere runes is simply courting death. The evil woman's sword seal could not only increase the power of Ji Wushang's sword intent, but it also had a terrifying devouring power that could devour other sword intents. This devouring ability was extremely terrifying, and it was a devastating blow to other swordsmen. Just think about it, if two evenly matched people, and one of them could directly devour the other's strength, how abnormal would that be? The power of the evil woman's sword seal surged into Nie Tian's body. He suddenly felt a terrifying force attacking his martial body, wanting to devour all the sword intent in his body. Nie Tian endured the pain and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He wanted to channel the dragon vein to force the power of the evil woman's sword imprint out of his body. But the more he did this, the more violent the power of the evil woman's sword seal became. The sword intent in his body was rapidly being devoured. Nie Tian felt like he was being bitten by thousands of ants, and the strength in his body was flowing out uncontrollably. The evil woman's sword seal was extremely terrifying. It was actually eating away at the forbidden runes in Nie Tian's body. But at this time, Nie Tian suddenly sensed that the forbidden art runes became berserk. They were actually frenziedly absorbing the power of the dragon vein seal. Sensing this, Nie Tian couldn't help but be startled, and his expression couldn't help but stiffen. Fat Cat once said that the forbidden art runes were a very strange kind of divine power that could absorb the power of the dragon vein seal. In the end, the most likely outcome was that the power of the dragon vein seal would be completely absorbed by the forbidden art runes, and the runes' potential would be unleashed to the extreme. As the forbidden art runes crazily absorbed the power of the dragon vein seal, Nie Tian felt its aura slowly becoming stronger. But this process was extremely painful. Nie Tian felt like his entire body was about to be torn apart, and his expression became ferocious. Stinking brat, enjoy this moment. Ji Wushang couldn't help but laugh when he saw Nie Tian enduring the pain. This battle was already within his grasp. But his laughter didn't last long before it abruptly stopped. Suddenly, he saw a strange scene in midair. The black forbidden art runes suddenly became berserk. Like maggots in a bone, they continuously seeped into the whirlpool of sword intent. The dragon-shaped runes continuously surged and immediately began to nibble away at the power within the whirlpool of sword intent. How is this possible? Ji Wushang suddenly sensed that something was wrong and exclaimed, his face turning deathly pale. The evil woman's sword seal could devour other sword intents, but at this moment, it was actually being devoured by the strange forbidden art runes. At the same time, Nie Tian felt the forbidden art runes around him become berserk, instantly devouring the power of the evil woman's sword seal that had seeped into his body. Nie Tian was taken aback by the sudden turn of events, and his face was filled with astonishment. The forbidden art runes have become stronger. At the same time, Fat Cat exclaimed with great excitement. They really have become stronger. Nie Tian couldn't help but exclaim after sensing for a moment. In the next moment, Nie Tian immediately understood everything. The invasion of the evil woman's sword seal wanted to devour the forbidden art runes, forcing them to crazily absorb the power of the dragon vein seal. After the forbidden art runes became stronger, they directly countered the power of the evil woman's sword shadow. Before, Nie Tian's forbidden art runes were high-grade yellow rank, but now, they had become low-grade mystic rank. Although it was only a minor increase, the aura of the forbidden art runes had a qualitative change. Inside the space, the forbidden art runes began to crazily absorb the power within the whirlpool of sword intent, directly transforming it into Nie Tian's power. What a terrifying forbidden art runes! Nie Tian's expression returned to normal, but his eyes were trembling. Earlier, he had used the dragon rune forbidden art to absorb the bloodline power within the godhead. Now, all three forbidden art runes were activated at the same time to absorb the power of the whirlpool of sword intent. The whirlpool of sword intent was formed by the evil woman's sword seal, and the evil woman's sword seal was a type of bloodline power. This is impossible. After a dozen or so seconds, Ji Wushang suddenly reacted and screamed. He wanted to retract the whirlpool of sword intent, but it was too late. The whirlpool had already been devoured by the forbidden art runes. At the same time, Nie Tian's aura also rose to the peak. The aura around him was as vast as the mountains and as vast as the sea, extremely terrifying. At this moment, Nie Tian slightly raised his palm, and a ball of golden light appeared in the center of his palm, surging with extremely mysterious power. This is... Nie Tian was stunned, unable to react for a moment. Sovereign's laws. The little fat cat let out a strange cry, incomparably overjoyed. The power surging in Nie Tian's palm was the power of the Overgod's law. The forbidden art rune's level increased, allowing Nie Tian to instantly reach the Overgod's power. What a terrifying power! Nie Tian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he felt the light in his palm. He finally understood why overgods were so terrifying. It was because of the power of the Overgod's law. Ji Wushang also noticed the golden light in Nie Tian's palm. His eyes trembled violently, and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Chapter 1678. Nie Tian's cold voice fell as his killing intent enveloped Ji Wushang. At this moment, Nie Tian was like a sharp sword standing between heaven and earth. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could tear the heaven and earth apart. Ji Wushang sensed Nie Tian's killing intent. His eyes couldn't help but tremble. He was so shocked that he couldn't say anything. He had never imagined that the battle would turn out like this. He used the evil woman's sword seal, but it helped Nie Tian instead. High Divine Sword Formation, kill! Nie Tianling shouted. His body was filled with endless battle intent. He took a step forward and his sword intent surged out. The sword intent fused with the sword formation, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremble violently. Ji Wushang sensed Nie Tian's aura. His eyes trembled violently and revealed an unconcealable fear. However, at this time, he had no way to retreat. He could only fight to the death. At this time, the crowd looked at Nie Tian. The latter was like a dazzling giant sword that spanned between heaven and earth. A terrifying sword aura spread in the void. It was hard to imagine that such a terrifying sword aura actually came from Nie Tian, a swordsman with the strength of a mid-god. At this time, Ji Wushang's figure moved first. He was very smart and wanted to seize the opportunity to attack first. Ji Wushang's body was surrounded by a terrifying sword intent vortex. It was the power of the evil woman's sword seal. He knew that the next sword attack would determine life and death, so he decided to go all out and stake everything on this one attack. Peerless 7 shadows / Ji Wushang's mouth trembled as he spat out a cold voice. Then, he slashed down with his sword. Suddenly, endless sword intent bloomed. The sword light engulfed the sky. In the sky, a terrifying sword shadow that resembled a collapsing mountain slashed down towards Nie Tian. Almost at the same time, Nie Tian's figure also moved. The heavenly sword slash suddenly pierced through the sky. The high divine sword formation's power instantly gathered on the tip of the sword. The violent sword energy shot out 10,000 meters. The power of this sword seemed to be able to destroy the sky. Boom! Before the two extremely terrifying sword images had even collided in the air, their powerful auras had already collided. A terrifying explosion sounded in the air, and even the power of the world began to tremble. What two terrifying people! Seeing the two huge swords in the air, the crowd couldn't help but cry out. The battle between Nie Tian and Ji Wushang was more exciting than people had imagined. Bang! Right at this moment, the two sky-splitting swords finally collided with each other. The sound of metal colliding rang out in the void, piercing through the clouds and cracking rocks as thunder rumbled through the 9 heavens. The eyes of the crowd suddenly froze at this moment. It was as if time and space had stopped. The shock in their hearts was revealed on their faces. Puff, puff, puff. Horrible sounds could be heard continuously. The two giant swords were trying to devour each other, as if they were going to tear each other apart. After a few seconds, the clash between the two giant swords finally came to an end. It was clear that Nie Tian's sword was superior. In the next moment, a terrifying sword shadow came crashing down on Ji Wushang. No! Feeling the cold, killing intent approaching, Ji Wushang screamed in a shrill voice. He never dreamed that the result of this battle would be like this. Don't kill him! At this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in the sky, and then a phantom figure appeared, looking at Nie Tian with cold and decisive eyes. When Nie Tian heard this voice, he couldn't help but frown. At the same time, he shouted in his heart, "Ghost King Palace Master, you appeared at the right time." The phantom figure that suddenly appeared was none other than the Ghost King Palace Master's sole doppelganger. Nie Tian didn't expect that the Ghost King Palace Master still hadn't left. "You don't want me to kill him, so I'll kill him." Nie Tian suddenly raised his head, looking provocatively at the Ghost King Palace Master, and said cold. Then, not only did he not withdraw his killing sword, but he even more violently pressed down on Ji Wushang. "Don't you dare!" The Ghost King Palace Master's face changed abruptly. With a growl, boundless power radiated from his body, and he directly slammed his palm at Nie Tian. "Ghost King Palace Master, you want to stop me with a mere soul doppelganger? What a joke!" Nie Tianling sneered, and then swung his sword, directly shattering the Ghost King Palace Master's palm. Boom! At the same time, the killing sword also fell. Ji Wushang didn't even have time to scream before he was reduced to ashes. Nie Tian was currently an early overgod, and his sword intent contained the power of overgod's laws. With his full strength, he directly destroyed Ji Wushang's godhead. The moment the sword shadow fell, time and space seemed to freeze. Countless eyes stared at the sky blankly. No words could express the shock in their hearts. "He's finally dead." The corner of Nie Tian's mouth couldn't help but curl up when he felt Ji Wushang's aura dissipate completely. "You didn't die in vain." Killing Ji Wushang in a domineering manner, Nie Tian had a big plan in mind. Not only did the Ghost King Palace Master's sudden appearance not frighten him, but it also made him very happy. From the Ghost King Palace Master's reaction, he cared a lot about Ji Wushang. It was precisely because of this that Nie Tian wanted to kill Ji Wushang. He wanted to use Ji Wushang's death to anger the Ghost King Palace Master. The scene was deathly silent. All eyes were focused on Nie Tian, and only a few people looked at the Ghost King Palace Master. Most people didn't know the Ghost King Palace Master, thinking he was just a secret guard of the Ghost King Palace. Wushang! Suddenly, the Ghost King Palace Master roared. His illusory figure trembled as if he would disappear at any time. Ji Wushang was not only the Ghost King Palace Master's disciple, but also the Ghost King Palace Master's son. How could the Ghost King Palace Master not be angry after witnessing his son's tragic death? This is bad. On the other side, Gui Shanquan saw the furious Ghost King Palace Master and screamed in his heart. His scarred face turned deathly pale. In fact, when Ji Wushang appeared, he sensed that something big was going to happen. He didn't expect that Ji Wushang would die in the hands of Nie Tian. The Ghost King Palace Master had many sons, but Ji Wushang was his most beloved son. Watching his beloved son being killed, the pain in the Ghost King Palace Master's heart could be imagined. At this time, more than a dozen ghost-faced martial artists appeared behind the Ghost King Palace Master. They were the secret guards lurking in the dark. These secret guards, of course, knew the identity of the Ghost King Palace Master. As long as the latter gave the order, they would inevitably attack and kill Nie Tian. Why do you want to kill him? But at this time, the Ghost King Palace Master inexplicably calmed down. A pair of cold eyes stared at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice, "You want to save him, so I want to kill him," Nie Tianling said coldly, his eyes extremely provocative. The battle between Ji Wushang and Nie Tian was originally a moment of life and death. If Nie Tian's strength was not enough, the one who died would be him. "You!" The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes trembled violently, and he said in a deep voice, "Do you know who you are talking to?" The Ghost King Palace Master was the pinnacle expert of the Sunluo Ghost domain. No one had ever dared to talk to him like this. "Of course I know, I'm talking to a soul avatar who overestimates his own strength." Nie Tian laughed, his eyes became more fierce, and his attitude became more provocative. Seeing Nie Tian's attitude, Gui Shanquan's face turned green. Chapter 1679. Gui Shanquan's expression was extremely ugly. He did not know how the Ghost King Palace Master would react next. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes were gloomy as he stared at Nie Tian. However, he was very calm and did not move at all. The dark guards behind him did not dare to move either. They just stared cold at Nie Tian. In the stands, Feng Buyu and Mo Yanwei were also extremely nervous, ready to fight at any time. As long as the Ghost King Palace Master made any strange movements, there would be a fierce battle. Nie Tian, I'll remember you. Unexpectedly, the Ghost King Palace Master spoke cold. Although the killing intent in his eyes was very strong, he did not attack. After all, he was only a soul clone and could not fight against Nie Tian. Moreover, with Nie Tian's current battle strength, even a dozen dark guards might not be Nie Tian's opponent at the same time. It should be known that Nie Tian's current strength was at the early stage of the Overgod realm. The Ghost King Palace Master was also very curious about the runes released from Nie Tian's body. How could it be so terrifying? On the other hand, the Ghost King Palace Master did not want to expose his identity. After all, he was the Palace Master and the Ghost King Arena was organized by him. There was nothing wrong with Nie Tian killing Ji Wushang. If the Ghost King Palace Master attacked at this time, he would be breaking his own rules, which would be detrimental to the Ghost King Palace's reputation. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Ghost King Palace Master could not stop Nie Tian at all. Ghost King Palace Master, I know you are very angry. If you want to take revenge or continue to trade with me, let's meet in the dark forest one day later. What do you think? Nie Tian smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth raised into a strange arc, and directly sent a voice transmission to the Ghost King Palace Master. Okay, it's a deal. The Ghost King Palace Master did not have any doubts and replied sternly. Palace Master Ghost King, let me remind you out of good intentions. If you really want to take revenge, a mere soul clone is far from enough. Nie Tian smiled again, the provocation in his eyes was very strong. I don't need you to tell me what to do. See you in the dark forest one day later. The Ghost King Palace Master sneered, and then his figure moved, and his avatar disappeared directly. When Nie Tian saw that the Ghost King Palace Lord had left, the corner of his mouth raised slightly. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and the aura around his body dissipated. Although the power of the 3 forbidden techniques was terrifying, they could not last for long. After all, Nye Tian's forbidden technique runes were of a very low level. Moreover, when the forbidden technique rune was activated, it also put a lot of pressure on his martial body. The aura around him dissipated, and Nye Tian's strength dropped rapidly. But in the next moment, he let out a cry of surprise. He suddenly discovered that his strength had dropped to the pinnacle of the mid-deity stage. It seems like the forbidden technique rune absorbed the power of the evil woman's sword seal, allowing my strength to increase again. Nye Tian immediately reacted and faintly smiled. Everyone retreat. At this time, Gui Shanchuan's figure appeared, indicating for the dark guards to retreat. When the crowd saw this scene, their tense nerves relaxed, but they couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Congratulations, you have defeated a superior God Ring Master. Gui Shanquan looked at Nye Tian with shining eyes, and said in a deep voice, but there was a trace of trembling in his eyes. When he first looked for Nye Tian, he did not expect that the latter could reach this step and defeat 3 superior God Ring Masters. Gui Shanquan knew that Nye Tian had the divine demon original embryo, but he did not expect the latter's strength to be so terrifying. Can I now put forward 3 conditions to the Ghost King Palace Master? Nye Tian, of course, understood the meaning of Gui Shanquan and said directly, yes. Gui Shanquan nodded slightly, and his eyes flashed with an unconcealable heat. He wanted Nye Tian to state his conditions in front of everyone. Mr. Gui, please tell the Ghost King Palace Master that my first condition is the opposing blood pill formula. Nye Tian did not talk nonsense and said directly, good. I will definitely tell the Palace Master. Gui Shanquan was excited, and his body trembled a little. He then asked, what about the other 2 conditions? No one knew that the soul avatar that appeared just now was the Ghost King Palace Master, so Nye Tian and Gui Shanquan did not expose this matter. The other 2 conditions, I will personally tell the Ghost King Palace Master. Mr. Gui need not worry. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He believed that Gui Shanquan would also tell these words to the Ghost King Palace Master. Gui Shanquan was stunned for a moment, but he did not say anything. In any case, Nye Tian said what he wanted. As for the other 2 conditions, he did not care. Gui Shanquan was a little puzzled. Why did Nye Tian want to see the Ghost King Palace Master, and even specifically reminded the Ghost King Palace Master that he must go with his real body? He killed Ji Wushang and provoked the Ghost King Palace Master. Wasn't this courting death? Goodbye, Mr. Gui. Nye Tian did not stay any longer and was about to leave. Next, as long as he obtained the opposing blood pills recipe and gave it to Gui Shanquan in exchange for the 7-leaf agave orchid, the deal between the 2 would be complete. Gui Shanquan was not a good person, so Nye Tian did not want to have too much contact with him. Nye Tian and the others left the arena and directly went to the Mo family's courtyard. Although today's arena battle was very thrilling, it was a blessing in disguise for Nye Tian. Not only did his strength increase, but the grade of the Forbidden Technique rune also increased. The increase in the grade of the Forbidden Technique rune allowed Nye Tian's battle prowess to increase by leaps and bounds. He could use the 3 great Forbidden Techniques at the same time, so his strength could reach the early Overgod level. The existence of the 3 great Forbidden Techniques had another benefit, which was that it could allow him to come into contact with higher realms as soon as possible, so his comprehension of the higher realms would be deeper. Just like now, although he only had the strength of a peak midgod, he had some comprehension of the laws of overgods. This was very beneficial to the improvement of his realms in the future. After a while, Nye Tian and the others returned to the Mo family's courtyard. After returning to the courtyard, Nye Tian naturally went to check on Rainstorm first. He only relaxed after confirming that she was fine for now. Afterwards, Nie Tian went to the main hall. He had some things he wanted to verify with Mo Yuani. Nie Tian. Mo Yuani immediately stood up when he saw Nie Tian. His eyes could not help but tremble. He seemed very excited. He had already learned everything that had happened in the arena from Mo Yanwei. Mo Yuani was very surprised that Nie Tian could defeat Ouyang Lingxie and Ji Wusheng. Mo Yuani was even more surprised when he sensed the change in Nie Tian's strength. His expression froze for quite a while. Mr. Mo, Nie Tian smiled faintly. Then, everyone sat down. Mr. Mo, I have something to ask you. Nie Tian sat down and said bluntly. Yes. Mo Yuani nodded slightly. How much do you know about Ouyang Lingxie? Nie Tian had learned Ouyang Lingxie's name from Mo Yanwei. His eyes were slightly gloomy as he asked in a deep voice. Ouyang Fu's adopted son. Mo Yuani was stunned. He did not expect Nie Tian to suddenly ask about this person. He could not help but think for a while and said, This person is known as the #1 genius of the Ouyang family in 10,000 years. Moreover, he activated the 9 evil sword seal by himself. This shows how terrifying his talent in swordsmanship is. Chapter 1680. Nie Tian, do you think there's something wrong with Ouyang Lingxie? Mo Yuani's face darkened when he saw Nie Tian's unusual reaction. Mr. Mo, you are from the Sangxi family. In your opinion, what kind of person can open the tri-evil sword seal by himself? Nie Tian asked with a smile instead of answering Mo Yuani's question. Huh! Mo Yuani was stunned and fell into deep thought. The tri-evil sword seal is extremely difficult to open. Many genius swordsmen may not be able to do it even with the help of someone who has already opened the sword seal. After a long time, Mo Yuani calmed down and said in a deep voice, In the Sangxi family, all the swordsmen who can open the tri-evil sword seal by themselves are geniuses. Their talent in swordsmanship is unparalleled, and they will become great swordsmanship masters in the future. Nie Tian nodded and smiled. He continued to ask, Mr. Mo, what do you think of Ouyang Lingxie's talent in swordsmanship? Mo Yuani was stunned again and said, Ouyang Lingxie is so young, less than 1,000 years old, but he already has the strength of a late-stage high god, and his swordsmanship has reached the essence of the sword. His talent in swordsmanship is indeed amazing. Amazing? Ouyang Lingxie's talent in the art of the sword is indeed very high, but it's only amazing. He's almost 1,000 years old, but he's still stuck at the essence of sword. He's far from being the genius that Mr. Mo described him to be. Nie Tian laughed and said, Ouyang Lingxie's talent in the art of the sword is indeed outstanding. This. Mo Yuani was stunned and didn't know what to say. Genius swordsmen usually became famous at a young age. This was because the younger a warrior was, the greater his potential was. Many of those great swordsmanship masters had reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship before they were 1,000 years old. Ouyang Lingxie's talent in swordsmanship was not bad, but he was still far from being a genius. Moihan, for example, was already a swordsman at the age of 10, while Ouyang Lingxie, who was nearly 1,000 years old, was only at the essence of the sword. In comparison, Ouyang Lingxie and Moihan were worlds apart. Even Nie Tian, who was a swordsman without a powerful sword seal, was already a swordsman with a sword bone. His age was still much lower than Ouyang Lingxie's. Nie Tian, what are you trying to say? Mo Yanwei's face was dull. His eyes trembled as he asked in a deep voice. Nie Tian smiled and said, Ouyang Lingxie's talent in swordsmanship is not bad, but he is definitely not a genius. So what I want to say is that his 9 evil sword seal was not activated by himself. This. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei looked at each other and gasped at the same time. What Nie Tian said made sense. Thinking about it this way, with Ouyang Lingxie's talent in swordsmanship, it was indeed impossible for him to activate the 9 evils sword seal by himself. I have fought with Ouyang Lingxie before. Nie Tian smiled again and said, His 9 evil sword seal is very powerful, but it can't even defeat me, a swordsman in the sword bone realm. Is this the fighting power of a swordsman who activated the sword seal by himself? Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei's faces darkened. They murmured, if Ouyang Lingxie's sword seal was not activated by himself, then who did it for him? Is this answer difficult? Nie Tian's mouth twitched and he said, As far as you know, who has the ability to activate the 3 evils sword seal? Ghost King Palace Master. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei's faces changed and they shouted at the same time. The two seemed to have thought of something at this moment. Their faces were full of shock and they were speechless for a long time. Nie Tian smiled faintly. What he wanted to tell the Mo brothers was that Ouyang Lingxie's 9 evils sword seal was activated by the Ghost King Palace Master. Nie Tian, you mean that Ouyang Lingxie is the Ghost King Palace Master's man? Mo Yanwei reacted quickly. His face was pale as he said in a deep voice. Very likely. Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, When Ouyang Lingxie came here before, he strongly encouraged Ouyang Fu and the Ouyang family to attack. Then he appeared in the High God arena. The strangest thing was that when Ouyang Fu appeared, he did not show joy. Instead, he showed a guilty conscience. So I guess that Ouyang Lingxie appeared in the arena to see the Ghost King Palace Master. Ghost King Palace Master. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei were stunned at the same time and exclaimed again. Mo Yanwei knew that Nie Tian had left for a while, but he did not know that he went to see the Ghost King Palace Master. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and told him everything that had happened. Finally, he said, Based on all the suspicious points, I think Ouyang Lingxie is very likely to be a spy that the Ghost King Palace Master placed beside Ouyang Fu. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei's eyes trembled. They did not expect Nie Tian's thinking to be so meticulous that he could even deduce this point. After a long time, Mo Yuani completely calmed down, but his expression was not relaxed. Instead, it was very solemn. He said, Ouyang Fu lost his wife and son, and he dotes on Ouyang Lingxie very much. He treats him as his own and trusts him very much. What you said just now is just a deduction. Even if you tell Ouyang Fu, he will not believe you. Yes, I know this. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He had seen the way Ouyang Fu looked at Ouyang Lingxie before. It was absolute trust, without the slightest doubt. However, Nie Tian already had a plan in mind. He would definitely let Ouyang Fu see Ouyang Lingxie's true colors. Then, Nie Tian told Mo Yuani that Ouyang Fu would arrive soon. Previously at the arena, Nie Tian asked Ouyang Fu to snatch it in Mo Yuani's name. The latter would definitely not break the promise. Nie Tian, the person you have been waiting for is here. Just then, Fat Cat's voice was heard, laughing. Ouyang Fu is here. Nie Tian nodded with a smile, then stood up. In the small courtyard, a figure directly landed, and immediately, the Mo family's secret guards were mobilized. Master Ouyang, you are here. Mo Yuani hurriedly walked out and signaled the secret guards to leave. Mo Yuani, why are you looking for me? Hurry up and say it. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Ouyang Fu's face was cold, and he said coldly, Mr. Ouyang, since you are here, why not have a good talk? Moreover, I have a big gift for you. Nie Tian took a step forward and said with a faint smile. Ouyang Fu glanced at Nie Tian, thought for a moment, and finally walked into the main hall. In the main hall, everyone sat down. Mo Yuani, what is it? Just say it. Ouyang Fu looked at Mo Yuani. He thought that the main character of this meeting was the latter. Mo Yuani smiled and couldn't help but look at Nie Tian. He also didn't know why Nie Tian invited Ouyang Fu. Mr. Ouyang, the real murderer who killed your wife and son, have you found him? Nie Tian didn't waste time and asked directly. The Ghost King Palace Master's whereabouts are secretive. He has been hiding in the Ghost King Palace, I haven't seen him yet. Ouyang Fu said in a deep voice, his eyes surging with terrible anger. He had been around the Ghost King Palace for the past few days, waiting for the Ghost King Palace Master to come out, but unfortunately, there was no one. The Ouyang family's strength was limited. It was impossible for them to rush into the Ghost King Palace to find the Ghost King Palace Master. I have an appointment with the Ghost King Palace Master tomorrow in the Dark Forest. I think Master Ouyang will be very interested. Nie Tian smiled faintly, the corner of his mouth raised into a strange smile. You have an appointment with the Ghost King Palace Master. Before he finished speaking, Ouyang Fu, Mo Yuani, and Mo Yanwei's voices sounded at the same time, the shock in their hearts completely revealed on their faces. Chapter 1681. In the main hall of the Mo family's small courtyard, Mo Yuani and the others were stunned and stared at Nie Tian in disbelief. They didn't expect that Nie Tian would make an appointment with the Ghost King Palace Master. Little brother, is what you said true? Ouyang Fu reacted and looked at Nie Tian with a fiery gaze. Do I look like I'm lying? Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Ouyang Fu indifferently. As Ouyang Fu looked at Nie Tian and sensed the strong confidence in his eyes, his expression flickered. At this moment, Nie Tian gave him a feeling that he was unfathomable. Ouyang Fu couldn't believe that the person sitting in front of him was actually a martial artist in his 20s. Mr. Ouyang, if you want this big gift and want to see the Ghost King Palace Master, you have to listen to me. Nie Tian's eyes swept over Ouyang Fu and said lightly. Ouyang Fu's eyes trembled and he couldn't help but frown. Being able to see the Ghost King Palace Master was indeed a big gift for Ouyang Fu. But it seemed difficult for him to listen to Nie Tian. Master Ouyang, Mr. Nie Tian doesn't have bad intentions towards you. I think you should trust him. At this time, Mo Yuani also spoke, his voice heavy. What do you want me to do? Ouyang Fu calmed down, his eyes became gloomy and cold. It's very simple. I just want you to hide and quietly watch a good show. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth raised into a strange smile as he said lightly. Huh! Ouyang Fu's face sank. He didn't know what Nie Tian wanted to do. Mr. Ouyang, don't worry. I don't have any bad intentions. I just want to save my friend. After pondering for a moment, Nie Tian said, I'll help you find out who killed your wife and son. In return, you have to help me restrain the Ghost King Palace Master. Restrain the Ghost King Palace Master? Ouyang Fu was stunned. He couldn't understand what Nie Tian was talking about. Nie Tian thought for a moment and decided not to hide it anymore. He directly told her his plan. Nie Tian's meeting with the Ghost King Palace Lord was actually to lure the tiger away from the mountain, to make the Ghost King Palace Lord leave. He would help Ouyang Fu find out what happened in the past and use Ouyang Fu to restrain the Ghost King Palace Lord. Then, Nie Tian would go to the Ghost King Palace to rescue Rui Qianyu and the others. Nie Tian believed that other than the Ghost King Palace Lord, no one else in the Ghost King Palace was Feng Buyu's opponent. After listening to Nie Tian's plan, Ouyang Fu, Mo Yuani, and the others were stunned. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. Nie Tian's plan completely treated Ouyang Fu as a chess piece. As long as you can find out the truth, I'm willing to help you stall the Ghost King Palace Master. After a long time, Ouyang Fu nodded solemnly, unexpectedly agreeing to Nie Tian's request. All right, it's a deal. Nie Tian smiled faintly as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Following that, Nie Tian and the others discussed for a while and came up with a detailed plan. Then, Nie Tian came to the room where Feng Buyu was. In this rescue plan, Ouyang Fu was the key figure, but Feng Buyu was equally important. Ouyang Fu was there to stall the Ghost King Palace Lord, while Feng Buyu was there to break into the Ghost King Palace with Nie Tian. You want to go to the Ghost King Palace to save people. Inside the room, after listening to Nie Tian's plan, Feng Buyu couldn't help but let out a strange cry, and said with a surprised expression, the Ghost King Palace is heavily guarded. Even if the Ghost King Palace Master isn't here, There are still countless experts guarding the place. It's impossible for you to save them all by yourself. It's not my strength alone, it's the two of us. Nye Tian looked at Feng Bu and said lightly, "The two of us?" Feng Bu suddenly froze and cried out again, "Yes." Nye Tian nodded heavily and said, "I've made a deal with Temple Lord Sun Luo. You and I will go to the Ghost King Palace to save people. Consider it as him helping me save people. What do you think?" Feng Bu was stunned and couldn't speak for a while. "Nye Tian, are you sure you want to force your way into the Ghost King Palace?" After a while, Feng Bu calmed down a lot and spoke with a serious expression. "Maybe we can wait for Chia to come. With him, the three of us can go to the Ghost King Palace." "It's too late." Nye Tian shook his head and said, "I'm going to see the Ghost King Palace Lord tomorrow. Can Temple Lord Sun Luo come here before tomorrow?" Feng Bu's face stiffened and couldn't say anything. Besides, even if the sect master of the Sun Luo 7 Knights were here, he probably wouldn't be willing to go to the Ghost King Palace with me. Nye Tian laughed. Based on his understanding of the Sun Luo 7 Knights, he didn't think the sect master would go to the Ghost King Palace with me. "All right, I, Feng Bu, will risk my life to accompany you this time." Feng Bu smiled bitterly, but his eyes were much more determined. These days, he had been with Nye Tian and saw the latter's monstrous talent. If Nye Tian went to the Ghost King Palace alone, he would definitely die. If Feng Bu came with him, there was still a chance. "Thank you." Nye Tian nodded and turned to leave. Back in his room, Nye Tian let out a long sigh of relief and his expression softened. Ouyang Fu and Feng Bu's side was no longer a problem. Next was the Ghost King Palace Lord. "Tomorrow's appointment, the Ghost King Palace Lord won't miss it, right?" Nye Tian murmured, but his eyes were filled with worry. If the Ghost King Palace Lord didn't show up tomorrow, or if another avatar went, it would be terrible. If the Ghost King Palace Lord was in the Ghost King Palace, Nye Tian and Feng Bu wouldn't stand a chance. "Nye Tian, have you really thought it through?" At this time, Fat Cat appeared, also looking very worried. Nye Tian's plan this time was indeed very dangerous. There were too many uncertain factors. And even if everything went according to his plan, with just him and Feng Bu, they might not be able to save the people. The Ghost King City's arena had a killing array that could kill a supreme god. How could there not be a killing array in the Ghost King Palace? Nye Tian wanted to force his way into the Ghost King Palace to save the people. It was too risky. "I have no other choice, I have to fight," Nye Tian said in a low voice, his face cold. Rui Jin Su and Tawny's child was about to be born. Nye Tian couldn't wait any longer. The longer Rui Qianyu and the others stayed in the Ghost King Palace, the more dangerous it would be. "Okay." Fat Cat nodded slightly. It seemed that they had to fight. Nye Tian didn't waste the remaining time, he used it to cultivate. His current strength was at the peak of the middle deity. There were already signs of him breaking through to the upper deity. If nothing went wrong, in a few months, Nye Tian would definitely break through to the upper deity. The next day, Nye Tian, Feng Bu, and Mo Yanwei came to the dark forest together. After a while, Ouyang Fu also appeared. "Fat, let's start." Nye Tian smiled and said lightly. Fat Cat's figure appeared. He immediately set up a small formation, perfectly hiding in the space. "You guys enter the formation." Fat Cat finished the formation, and said to Ouyang Fu and the others. This formation was a concealment formation. It could help Ouyang Fu and the others hide perfectly. Ouyang Fu and the others were stunned for a while, then they immediately stepped into the formation and disappeared. Nye Tian nodded slightly. He activated the holographic divine sigil and felt relieved when he didn't sense the aura of Ouyang Fu and the others. Fat Cat's formation was indeed powerful. It could even hide a powerhouse like Ouyang Fu perfectly. Chapter 1682. In the dark forest at the edge of the Sun Luo ghost domain, Nye Tian stood in the dense forest, waiting quietly. "He's here." At this moment, Fat Cat's voice sounded. Then the space trembled slightly, a figure appeared, a familiar ghost mask appeared in midair. Ghost King Palace Master. Nye Tian saw the ghost mask. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he exclaimed in his heart. The ghost mask martial artist in front of him was exactly the same as the Ghost King Palace Master he saw before, but his aura was much stronger. This is the body of the Ghost King Palace Master, Fat Cat said with certainty. Nye Tian nodded slightly, then looked at the Ghost King Palace Master and said, Ghost King Palace Master, you really came. The Ghost King Palace Master's figure moved, and directly landed in a place only tens of meters away from Nye Tian. Feeling the aura of the Ghost King Palace Master at such a close distance, Nye Tian felt that the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a towering mountain. The aura of the Ghost King Palace Master was even stronger than Sun Luo's 7 Knights. There was no doubt that the Ghost King Palace Master's strength had reached the highest realm. Nye Tian. The ghost mask on the Ghost King Palace Master's face trembled, a pair of abyss-like eyes stared at Nye Tian, and a low voice sounded. This king didn't expect you to be so courageous, to come alone. Are you not afraid that this king will kill you directly? The Ghost King Palace Master sensed the surroundings, very sure that there was no one around, only Nye Tian. He was surprised that Nye Tian dared to meet him alone. One must know that with the Ghost King Palace Master's strength, he could kill Nye Tian in seconds. Ghost King Palace Master, I have too many things you want to know, so you won't kill me easily. Nye Tian laughed, but very indifferent, without the slightest fear. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes sank, staring closely at Nye Tian. He could see that Nye Tian's calmness was not fake, but genuine indifference. It was hard to imagine that a medium god martial artist could remain calm in the face of a paramount god martial artist. What kind of mental fortitude was that? Are you that confident? The Ghost King Palace Master spoke in a deep and cold voice. In my eyes, you are nothing but an ant. As long as I want to, I can trample you to death at any time. Really? Nye Tian chuckled and said, If you kill me, you will never know what the power of the runes in my body is. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes turned cold. He did not expect Nye Tian to be so shrewd. The reason why he did not kill Nye Tian directly was that he wanted the rune power in Nye Tian's body. He had personally watched as Nye Tian, after activating his runes, rose in power from the god level to the sovereign level. What was even stranger was that this rune did not seem to have any negative effects. Otherwise, Nye Tian would not be able to stand here alive and kicking. The Ghost King Palace Master felt that if he could obtain this rune and fully activate it, his power would definitely rise to the peak of the paramount god level. Because of this, he did not kill Nye Tian. The forbidden rune was too attractive to him. The Ghost King Palace Master came to see Nye Tian in person not only for revenge, but also for the forbidden rune. Nye Tian also knew this, so he dared to stand in front of the Ghost King Palace Master indifferently. Since you know what I want, then tell me the secret of the rune, maybe I will spare your life. The Ghost King Palace Master said cold, his eyes revealing a murderous intent. Ghost King Palace Master, I have defeated 3 arena masters. According to the rules of the Ghost King Arena, I can make 3 requests. Nye Tian felt the Ghost King Palace Master's murderous intent, but he said calmly, Why don't we settle this first, then talk about the rune? The Ghost King Palace Master was slightly taken aback, then he laughed and said, Don't you want the opposing blood pills recipe? I can give it to you. As for the other 2 conditions, I can also satisfy you, say it. Nye Tian smiled and said, Ghost King Palace Master, my other 2 conditions are very simple. I just want to ask you 2 questions. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes were cold and murderous. Nye Tian suddenly looked up, his eyes became cold and said, The first question, are you from the Sangxi family, Ji family? The Ghost King Palace Master heard Nye Tian's words. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, obviously a trace of nervousness. Then there was a long silence, no one spoke. Why is this question difficult? Nie Tian saw the Ghost King Palace Master's reaction. He already had an answer in his heart. Yes. Suddenly, the Ghost King Palace Master spoke cold. The murderous intent in his eyes became stronger. As expected, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth slightly curled up, secretly smiling in his heart. His guess was right, the Ghost King Palace Master really was from the Ji family. The second question, the Sangxi family Ouyang family Master Ouyang Fu's wife and child. Who killed them? Nie Tian's eyes flickered, asking again. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes suddenly narrowed, the way he looked at Nie Tian changed. Stinking brat, who are you? The next moment, the Ghost King Palace Master reacted. He didn't answer Nie Tian's question, but growled cold. His eyes became cold and murderous. Nie Tian first pointed out his identity, then mentioned Ouyang Fu. This made the Ghost King Palace Master wary of him. Who was Nie Tian? How did he know so many things? Ghost King Palace Master, it seems that the Ouyang family master's wife and child were really killed by you. Nie Tian saw the Ghost King Palace Master's reaction. He couldn't help but sneer. Lord Palace Master really has a good plan, killing the Ouyang family master's wife and child, then framing the Mo family, causing the Ouyang family and Mo family to fight to the death. In this way, the final beneficiary is your Ji family. Amazing! Nie Tian said solemnly, his eyes fixed on the Ghost King Palace Master. Nie Tian, many people die at a young age without knowing why because they know too much. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes trembled. His whole body released a crazy murderous intent, revealing his murderous intent. He really didn't expect Nie Tian to know so many things. If that's the case, then you can't keep your life. The Ghost King Palace Master took a step forward, the aura around him rumbled, like a 10,000 zhang tsunami, spreading towards Nie Tian. Kill to silence the witness? Nie Tian smiled faintly, then frowned and said in a loud voice, Mr. Ouyang, are you satisfied with this big show? Ghost King Palace Master, I'll tear you apart. Just as his voice fell, a furious voice suddenly sounded in the void, followed by a surging sword intent whistling out, directly crushing the Ghost King Palace Master's aura. The next moment, a figure appeared in front of Nie Tian. It was Ouyang Fu, and behind Ouyang Fu, the figures of Feng Bu and Mo Yanwei also appeared. Ouyang Fu. The Ghost King Palace Master saw the face of the person in front of him. He couldn't help but scream. He never thought that Ouyang Fu would suddenly appear. Chapter 1683. The Ghost King Palace Lord suddenly understood everything. His anger soared to the heavens, his whole body trembling, feeling as if he was being bitten by countless little insects, extremely uncomfortable. How could he have ever imagined that he, the dignified Palace Lord, would be fooled by an ant like this? You were too cooperative, Ghost King. You can't blame me for that. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Then, he looked at Ouyang Fu and Mo Yanwei and said in a deep voice, I'm done here. The rest is up to you two. You killed my wife and son, Ghost King. I'll kill you. Ouyang Fu's sword will surged, making him look like an enormous sword, a sword of slaughter that seemed capable of ripping apart heaven and earth. Ouyang Fu was a peak over God, and his cultivation of the sword had reached the level of selflessness. That was more than enough to keep the Palace Lord occupied. Although the Palace Lord was an early paramount god, his cultivation of the sword was only at the quintessence of the sword, which made him even weaker than Ouyang Fu. Nie Tian was a bit confused. If the Palace Lord was from the Ji clan, then his cultivation of the sword couldn't possibly be lower than that. Ouyang Fu was enraged like a wild beast, directly thrusting his sword towards the Ghost King Palace Lord. The Palace Lord was stunned, but didn't dare to be careless. A broken sword appeared in his hand, and sword will surged out to meet Ouyang Fu. A damaged sword of a nascent spirit. When Nie Tian saw the broken sword in the Ghost King Palace Master's hand, He immediately realized that the latter's origin spirit had been injured, so it was incomplete. This was the reason why his sword Dao realm was not high. In his rage, Ouyang Fu disregarded everything and fought with no regard for his life, forcing the Ghost King Palace master to retreat. Mr. Amour, I'll leave this to you. Nie Tian didn't waste any time. After saying a few words to Mo Yanwei, he motioned for Feng Buyu to leave. Without hesitation, the two of them headed toward the Ghost King Palace. Nie Tian had no idea how long Ouyang Fu would be able to keep the palace lord occupied, so he had to hurry. Damnation! The Ghost King Palace lord saw Nie Tian and Feng Buyu leaving in the direction of the Ghost King Palace, and immediately understood. He cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Nie Tian and Feng Buyu moved like lightning and soon arrived outside a dark palace. Nie Tian, this is the Ghost King Palace. Feng Buyu looked at the dark palace in front of him and said in a deep voice. Nie Tian frowned slightly. He could vaguely feel that the Ghost King Palace was enveloped by a strange aura. It was extremely terrifying. But at this time, he didn't have time to think too much. Saving people was more important. Let's go. Nie Tian bellowed. His figure moved and directly flew towards the Ghost King Palace. The walls of the Ghost King Palace were a few hundred meters tall, but to Nie Tian and Silent Wind, it was no obstacle at all. Who is it? Just as Nie Tian and Feng Buyu's silhouettes appeared on top of the city walls, a low voice rang out from the void. Following which, a black-robed figure wearing a strange devil mask appeared. This person was none other than a guard from the Ghost King Palace. Die! Nie Tian glanced at the guard. The latter was an early-stage high god. He let out a low roar and thrust his sword forward. The guard didn't even have time to react before he was killed on the spot. But in the next moment, dozens of black-robed figures soared into the sky and stood in mid-air, surrounding Nie Tian and Feng Buyu. How dare you trespass into the Ghost King Palace? The dozens of guards roared and simultaneously attacked. Instantly, countless blades and sword shadows pressed down on Nie Tian and Feng Buyu. The strength of these guards was not weak. All of them were around the peak of High God Realm. A bunch of small fries wants to stop your Grandpa Feng? Facing the combined attack of dozens of guards, Feng Buyu sneered. Immediately, a pair of illusory wings appeared on his back. With a sudden flap, countless sharp blades shot out. Arg! Miserable howls could be heard as dozens of guards died tragically. What a terrifying technique! Nie Tian couldn't help but exclaim in his mind. Feng Buyu's combat strength was truly terrifying. Previously, when Nie Tian fought with Feng Buyu, he didn't pay much attention to him. But now, he discovered that Feng Buyu was actually a rare martial artist of wind attribute. Let's go, Nie Tian, Feng Buyu said with a smile. Then, he blurred into action and flew towards a large palace. As soon as Nie Tian and Feng Buyu landed, countless black-robed martial artists surrounded them from all directions. I'll deal with these people, Feng Buyu sneered. Intense killing intent was emitted from his eyes. Nie Tian nodded slightly. A map scroll appeared in his hand. It was the map of the Ghost King Palace that he obtained from Gui Shanquan. Opening the map, Nie Tian confirmed his location and confirmed 2 routes that would lead him to the underground chambers of the Ghost King Palace. One of the routes was far away but had few guards. The other route was closer but had a lot of guards. Trespassing into the Ghost King Palace, you're courting death. At this time, a guard leader roared. His figure moved and punched at Nie Tian. A terrifying fist shadow rumbled out and pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian stomped on the ground and punched out as well. The image of a dragon shook the sky and directly shattered the fist image. The guard commander died on the spot. A martial artist at the peak of High God Realm was already very strong, but unfortunately, such strength was nothing in front of Nie Tian. Get lost! Feng Buyu roared. The wings on his back suddenly flapped and a violent hurricane appeared, rolling up dozens of ghost face guards and crushing them into meat paste. Feng Buyu's strength was too ferocious. For a moment, the other guards didn't dare to rush forward. Nie Tian. Feng Buyu looked at Nie Tian, waiting for the latter to make a decision. The guards in front of them were just small fries, not worth mentioning at all. The most terrifying thing about the Ghost King Palace was the Ghost King hidden guards and the strange killing array inside. Follow me. Nie Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at a hall in the distance. His figure moved and directly flew over. He decided to take the shortest route. Even if there were more guards, at least he could save time. Feng Buyu followed closely behind Nie Tian, clearing the small fries and crab guards along the way. Then, the two of them came outside a hall and landed. There is a secret door in the hall. That is the place to enter the underground chamber. Nie Tian looked at the Ghost King Hall in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Let's go in." Feng Buyu did not hesitate and directly rushed into the hall. Nie Tian hurried to catch up. But just as the two of them were about to enter the hall, the void suddenly trembled. Then, a terrifying palm shadow fell, covering the sky and covering the earth. "Watch out!" Feng Buyu screamed and then punched out, forcefully resisting the palm in the air. Boom! In the air, the fist and the palm collided and directly collapsed. The terrifying power wreaked havoc in the space. Feng Buyu's figure trembled and he could not help but take a few steps back, a trace of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. "Brother Feng, are you okay?" Nie Tian could not help but cry out when he saw the situation. "I'm fine." Feng Buyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was full of fighting spirit as he looked at the person who attacked in the sky. Nie Tian suddenly looked up and saw dozens of ghost-face martial artists in the air. Each of them had a strong aura. They were all overgod. Chapter 1684. Oh no! Nie Tian looked at the several dozen overgods in the sky and could not help but sink. His expression changed as well. There were several dozen overgods, and the person leading them was a peak overgod. He was even more powerful than Feng Buyu. The strength of the guards of the Ghost King Palace had exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. "It's the hidden guards of the Ghost King!" Feng Buyu cried out as well. His voice trembled slightly. "Who are you? How bold of you to trespass into the Ghost King Palace!" The green mask on the leader's face trembled as he spoke coldly. His voice was cold. He was Ji Qiushang, the leader of the hidden guards. "Isn't it just the Ghost King Palace? So what if I trespass? What can you do to me?" Feng Buyu immediately calmed down and sneered. His aura rose sharply as he prepared himself for a bitter battle. "What a madman! You're looking to die." Ji Qiushang's eyes flickered coldly as killing intent radiated from him. His lips curled into a cold smile as he growled, "Kill them!" "Yes." The several dozen hidden guards replied in unison. Their voices surged. In the next moment, a terrifying aura crashed down on Nie Tian and Feng Buyu like raging wave. Even the ground under their feet couldn't withstand the terrifying power, and was directly torn apart. Nie Tian did not hesitate at all when he saw this. He directly activated the 3 forbidden inscriptions, and violent power circulated through his body. His strength skyrocketed, reaching early overgod in a single moment. Boom! At the same time, Feng Buyu charged up madly. Like a sharp blade, he shot towards the sky and tore through the pressure above him. "Not bad, but you're still a little too weak for trespassing into the Ghost King Palace." Ji Qiushang's eyes trembled when he saw Feng Buyu charge over. He directly struck out with his sword, and sharp sword intent erupted. A terrifying streak of light shot through the air towards Feng Buyu. "Brother Feng, be careful!" Nie Tian could not help but cry out in worry for Feng Buyu when he saw this. Feng Buyu moved quickly. The illusionary wings on his back suddenly flapped, and his speed immediately multiplied. He actually dodged Ji Qiushang's fatal strike. "I'll start with you first." Feng Buyu's figure was like a bolt of lightning, and he instantly approached a shadow guard. he roared, and a whirlpool of wind gushed out from his palm. Suddenly, a sharp wind blade appeared, and attacked at an incredible speed. That secret guard didn't even have the time to scream before he died. "Nie Tian, I'm fine." Feng Biu stood tall in the air and looked at Nie Tian with a smile. "Leave this to me." "Yes." Nie Tian nodded solemnly. With his strength, even if he stayed, he would only become a burden to Feng Biu. Nie Tian did not hesitate and directly flew into the hall. "Stop him!" Seeing this, Ji Qiushang roared in anger. Following which, several of the Ghost King's secret guards moved together, attacking Nie Tian. "Do you think you can stop me?" Nie Tian suddenly turned around and sneered. He directly stabbed out with his sword, and several flaming swords appeared, like roiling fire dragons, wreaking havoc in the air. 3 forbidden techniques were activated at the same time. Nie Tian had reached the strength of an early overgod, so it was naturally a piece of cake for him to deal with a few Ghost King's secret guards of the same strength. Bang! Bang! Several muffled sounds rang out. The Ghost King's secret guards were knocked back by Nie Tian, and they were heavily injured. Nie Tian did not even look back, and directly rushed into the hall. "A bunch of trash!" Seeing this, Ji Qiushang roared angrily. He moved, wanting to act himself, but was stopped by Feng Biu. "Your opponent is me." Feng Biu stared coldly at Ji Qiushang and smiled darkly. "Die!" Ji Qiushang roared angrily again, stabbing out with his sword. The violent sword intent turned into a wave of air that crushed towards Feng Biu. Feng Biu's strength was below Ji Qiushang's, so he did not dare to face him head-on. However, he was much faster than Ji Qiushang. With the agility of the wind wings, he dodged again and mocked, "Your strength is only SOSO. You can't hit anyone at all." Damn it! Ji Qiushang was furious. He could only watch as Nie Tian charged into the hall, but there was nothing he could do. "Brat, with your strength, you're looking to die by entering the hall." Ji Qiushang looked at Nie Tian's back, and deep killing intent surged in his eyes. The Ghost King Hall was like a forbidden ground of the Ghost King Palace. Only the palace master could enter. No one else could. Someone had once tried to enter the Ghost King Hall, but they were killed on the spot by the killing formations of the hall. Their corpses and godheads were not left behind. Nie Tian broke away from the Ghost King's secret guards and arrived at the entrance of the hall. Suddenly, he froze on the spot. "Killing formation." At the same time, Fat Cat's voice sounding a little nervous. "Little fatty, can you break it?" Nie Tian asked anxiously, his eyes narrowing. It was because he sensed the existence of a killing formation in the hall that he stopped in his track. The secret underground chamber of the Ghost King Palace was not a place one could casually enter. "It's impossible to break the killing formation, but I can find a way to avoid it." Fat Cat smiled faintly. His silhouette flickered and appeared in front of the hall. His entire body was enveloped in a glazed aura, slowly probing the killing formation in the hall. The glazed aura was like tentacles, probing the killing formation. A moment later, the killing intent of the killing formation spread out, as if it would explode in the next moment. Nie Tian's face tightened. This was not the time to be anxious. He could only wait for Fat Cat to find a flaw in the killing formation. "Kill him for me!" Ji Qiushang could not help but roar out furiously when he saw a Fat Cat suddenly appear beside Nie Tian, actually probing the killing formation. The other secret guards heard Ji Qiushang's order and moved, charging towards Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, stop them!" Fat Cat could not help but call out when he sensed the killing intent behind him. Nie Tian frowned. He took a step forward and the sword around him surged. Like a sword that could split the sky, he charged towards the secret guards. Boom! The sword was like a mountain, filled with killing intent. It directly landed on the secret guard who had charged over first. He did not even have the time to cry out before dying on the spot. After Nie Tian used the 3 forbidden techniques, Early overgods were no longer enough in his eyes. The corner of Nye Tion's mouth couldn't help but twitch as he killed a Ghost King's guard with a single sword strike. The Supreme God's magical laws are indeed powerful. The reason why the strike earlier was so powerful was not just because of the 3 forbidden techniques, but also because of the Overgod's laws. It allowed Nye Tion's sword intent to increase drastically. Kill him! At this moment, the secret guards roared out furiously at the same time and struck out together. Their auras surged wildly towards Nye Tion. In that moment, Nye Tion felt his chest tighten. He actually felt like he could not breathe. It was still too much for him to take on over a dozen overgods at the same time with his current strength. Chapter 1685. Nye Tion. In the distance, Feng Buyu could not help but cry out in shock when he saw Nye Tion take on the combined attack of over a dozen overgods. Nye Tion was simply too crazy. Even Wind Buyu would have to consider whether or not he should take the attack head-on when more than a dozen Lord Gods joined forces. "You're looking to die." Ji Qiushang sneered when he saw this. His eyes were extremely somber. In his opinion, Nye Tion would definitely die once the attack landed. Even the weakest of the Ghost King's hidden guards was an early overgod. There were even a few mid-overgods among them. Moreover, the hidden guards usually cultivated together, so their teamwork was very good. If they worked together, even late overgods might not be able to endure their attack. At this moment, the huge sword of fire slammed over. A great thrum rang out, surging through the air. It actually possessed the power to pierce through the clouds. Bang! 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 Countless attacks landed on the huge sword of fire. Its power was obstructed, and it tottered as if it was about to collapse. Nye Tion retreated rapidly as blood flowed from the corner of his lip. Facing off against over a dozen overgods like this was just too great of a blow for him. Boom! Finally, the huge sword of fire could not endure it any longer and directly collapsed. Boundless sword intent surged through the space. Bang! 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 In the next moment, a terrifying attack fell, directly landing on Nye Tion's astral soul armor. Dazzling cracks appeared on the huge armor, and Nye Tion was forced back repeatedly. Several terrifying wounds appeared on his body, and blood flowed constantly. He was completely covered in blood. However, Nye Tion continued to stand there like an iron wall. The secret guards all gasped. They were completely stunned by the scene before them. Nye Tion was just too terrifying. He had managed to take on an attack like that. Ji Qiushang looked at the bloodied Nye Tion, and his eyes suddenly darkened. He roared, "Kill him for me!" Nye Tion's strength made him feel fear, and unease, so he had to kill him. "He can't hold on any longer, let's attack together and kill him." The Ghost King's shadow guards reacted and attacked again, attacking Nye Tion. "Nye Tion, let's get out of here!" Almost at the same time, the fat cat's voice sounded, and then a map was transmitted into Nye Tion's divine sense. Nye Tion snapped out of his daze and dashed into the great hall. His figure was incomparably agile, dashing left and right, ingeniously avoiding the traps of the killing formation, instantly rushing into the main hall. The Ghost King's shadow guards were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. This kid actually entered the Ghost King hall. Could it be that the killing formation in the main hall is gone? A shadow guard exclaimed, and then his eyes became hot, unexpectedly wanting to rush into the main hall. The moment he stepped into the main hall, an invisible killing array was activated. Immediately after, a strange force shot towards him like an arrow released from a bow. Bang! Before anyone could react, a muffled sound rang out, and the dark guard's head was directly blown off. Hiss! The other shadow guards all gasped, their eyes trembling as they looked at the scene in front of them, as if they were in a dream. At this time, no one dared to take half a step closer to the main hall. Damn it! Ji Qiushang saw that Nye Tion actually magically entered the main hall. He couldn't help but roar, his eyes staring with fire. "Nye Tian, this guy is not only strong, I didn't expect that even his pet is so terrifying." Feng Buyu swallowed a mouthful of saliva, secretly said in his heart, "You deserve to die." At this time, Ji Qiushang immediately turned to look at Feng Buyu, revealing his murderous intent. Feng Buyu smiled, his figure moved and flew up into the sky. Feng Buyu didn't dare to fight Ji Qiushang head-on, but if the latter wanted to kill him, it was not impossible. On the other side, in the Ghost King Hall, Nye Tian avoided the killing formation and entered the main hall, but saw that the main hall was empty. There was no entrance to the secret underground room. The map shows that the secret room entrance is in the center of the main hall. Why is there nothing here? Nye Tian frowned, a puzzled look on his face. In the Ghost King Hall, except for the 4 huge stone pillars with dragon carvings, there was nothing around. Nye Tian, the entrance is inside one of the stone pillars. Fat Cat's figure appeared again, his fat body climbing up a huge stone pillar, as if he was looking for something. Fat Cat checked the 4 stone pillars one by one, and finally locked on to one of the stone pillars, saying, "The secret room entrance is inside this stone pillar, try to blast it open." "Alright." Nye Tian nodded solemnly. Then, he unleashed his sword aura and slammed it into the stone pillar. Boom! With a loud noise, a gap was blasted open on the stone pillar. Nye Tian stepped forward to take a look. The stone pillar was hollow, and there was a passage inside, leading to the underground secret room. Without hesitation, Nye Tian stepped out and directly entered the stone pillar passage. His figure descended at an extremely fast speed, feeling that the surrounding space was getting more and more humid. Soon, after descending for about a few thousand meters, Nye Tian felt the space below suddenly become larger. His figure moved, and directly landed on a wide open space. What a big secret room! Nye Tian looked around the vast space, and couldn't help but exclaim. He looked around and confirmed that he was in a dark passage at the moment. Looking ahead, it was actually a few thousand meters away. Nye Tian observed for a moment, and without delay, directly walked along the dark passage. At this time, he felt that there seemed to be a powerful sword intent lurking in the dark passage space, a kind of power similar to some kind of terrible sword seal. This sword seal's aura, why is it somewhat familiar? Nye Tian frowned and murmured, "It's the aura of the 3 evils sword seal." Fat Cat seemed to have discovered something and exclaimed. Nye Tian suddenly froze, and then immediately sensed it, and his expression changed. The sword seal aura in the space was indeed the 3 evils sword seal. Nye Tian had fought with the 3 evil sword seal martial artists, and was very familiar with this aura, but at this moment he was very puzzled, because what he felt was not a single kind of sword seal aura, but more like the aura produced by the fusion of the 3 evil sword seals. Because of this, Nye Tian didn't immediately think of the 3 evil sword seal. 3 kinds of sword seals seem to have fused together. This is too scary. Nye Tian frowned, and his eyes could not help but tremble. The 3 evil sword seal, each of the sword seals contained terrible power, and rumor had it that it was comparable to the 10 strongest seals. If the 3 kinds of sword seals were to be fused together, the terrifying power could be imagined. Nye Tian was stunned for a few seconds, then reacted, and continued to move forward. The more he moved forward, the more he felt the sword seal aura in the space became stronger. What the hell is going on? Nye Tian looked puzzled. It seemed that the underground secret room of the Ghost King Palace had a mystery. Who is it? At this time, a low voice sounded, revealing a trace of anger and tension. Chapter 1686. Rui Qianyu. Nye Tian suddenly heard a voice and his face stiffened. Although the voice was very weak, Nye Tian was very sure that the owner of the voice was definitely Rui Qianyu. Immediately afterwards, Nye Tian snapped out of his daze and dashed towards the source of the sound. His speed was very fast. The further he went, the stronger the aura of the sword seal in the air. After a while, Nye Tian walked out of the secret passage. In front of him was an empty space that looked like a huge cave. The aura of the sword seal is coming from here. Rui Qianyu's voice is also coming from here. Nie Tian looked at the huge cave in front of him, and the corner of his mouth trembled. He was actually a little nervous. Who is it? Just then, there was another scream coming from the cave. It was very clear. Rui Qianyu. Hearing this voice, Nie Tian's eyes could not help but tremble. Then, he moved and stepped into the cave. The moment he entered the cave, Nie Tian suddenly felt that the aura of the sword seal in the surrounding space had become stronger. It surged wildly as if it wanted to penetrate into his body. However, Nie Tian did not care about this. Instead, he looked up at the top of the cave and his whole person was stunned. In the mid-air above the cave, a terrifying sword seal was floating there. It was filled with extremely terrifying sword seal aura, and it was extremely violent. And in the middle of the sword seal, two figures were standing. They were two very familiar faces, Rui Qianyu and Tawny. At this time, Rui Qianyu looked at Nie Tian. Her delicate face was stiff. Her mouth was slightly open but she could not speak. You are Nie Tian? It was Tawny who reacted when she saw Nie Tian and spoke with a trembling voice. Nie Tian's appearance had changed a little, but his eyes and aura had not. Rui Qianyu, Tawny, you're really here. At this time, Nie Tian's stiff face relaxed. When he saw the two people in front of him, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Nie Tian, it's really you. Rui Qianyu's eyes trembled as if she couldn't believe what was happening in front of her. Tears welled up in her eyes. She had been imprisoned here for several months, and during this period of time, the face that appeared the most in her mind was Nie Tian. In the past, when she was in the plain world, she was in danger many times, and every time, it was Nie Tian who appeared and saved her. Imperceptibly, she had developed a deep dependence on Nie Tian in her heart. Therefore, when she was imprisoned this time, the person she thought about the most was Nie Tian. Rui Qianyu, it's really me. Nie Tian became cold, smiled faintly. Nie Tian, why are you here? Rui Qianyu was much calmer now. As if she suddenly thought of something, she frowned and said, It's too dangerous here. You should leave quickly. Rui Qianyu, Tawny, I know everything. Ruyu, Zhensu is safe now. I'll get you out immediately. Nie Tian smiled faintly and gave a simple explanation to reassure them. Nie Tian, you can't save us. Rui Qianyu looked at Nie Tian. Her delicate face was obviously stiff, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. Nie Tian couldn't help but be stunned. He knew that Rui Qianyu was a determined person and rarely showed fear. He rarely saw Rui Qianyu so panicked. Rui Qianyu, I'll definitely get you out of here. Nie Tian looked at Rui Qianyu, his expression extremely determined. Since he was already here, how could he leave without doing anything? Nie Tian took a step forward and felt the sword seal that enveloped Rui Qianyu and Tawny. He couldn't help but frown. That sword seal was the three evils' sword seal. It contained unimaginable power. But at this moment, the three evils' sword seal was a cage that trapped Rui Qianyu and Tawny. Nie Tian, this sword seal cage was set by the Ghost King Palace Master. Except for him, no one can break it. Rui Qianyu's eyes flickered, and she couldn't help but look at Tawny beside her. Tawny was pregnant and could give birth at any time. If Nie Tian couldn't break the sword seal cage, then Rui Qianyu and Tawny's child would be born in the cage. The baby would be born, but its innate soul wasn't strong enough. If it was exposed to such a terrifying sword seal, it was very likely that it would die prematurely. Tawny, what's wrong with your eyes? At this time, Nie Tian suddenly noticed that the scar of dusk on Tawny's forehead had become very dim, even faintly black. I'm fine. Do you have a way to get us out? Tawny asked nervously with a painful expression. She knew how terrifying the sword seal cage was, but she really wanted to get out. Not for herself, but for the child in her belly. During this period of time, In order to prevent the child in her belly from getting hurt, Tawny had been opening the Scar of Dusk to resist the Sword Seal's aura. So her Scar of Dusk was impacted by the Sword Seal and became dim and black. "I will definitely get you out." Nye Tion's expression was solemn, and he said in a deep voice, "Nye Tion, this Sword Seal cage is very scary. It's very difficult to break." At this time, before Nye Tion could speak, Fat Cat's figure appeared, frowned and said, "I speculate that this Sword Seal is inherited from the ancient times. With the Ghost King Palace Master's strength, it's impossible for him to release such a terrifying Sword Seal cage." When Rui Qianyu and Tawny saw a Fat Cat suddenly appear on Nye Tion's shoulder, they were stunned, but did not speak. The Ghost King Palace Master just used this Sword Seal to imprison Rui Qianyu and Tawny, right? Nye Tion frowned. It turned out that the Sword Seal cage was inherited from the ancient times. No wonder it was so scary. Yes. Little Fat Cat nodded and said, "This is a Sword Seal that is perfectly fused with the 3 evil Sword Seals. It contains a terrifying power. The Ghost King Palace Master can use the Sword Seal as a cage. It can be said to be very powerful." Using the Sword Seal as a cage, the Ghost King Palace Master was not only powerful, but also extremely vicious. Under the shroud of the Sword Seal, if Rui Qianyu and Tawny dared to resist, the Sword Seal would inevitably release a terrible power. That kind of power was not something the two could bear. "Fat, how do I save them?" Nye Tion asked anxiously. He didn't have much time left. If the Ghost King Palace Master returned to the Ghost King Palace, it would be terrible. "It's very difficult." Fat Cat looked serious and said, "The power in the Sword Seal is too strong. With your current strength, you can't break it at all. If you force your way through the Sword Seal, the 2 girls will also be in danger." "Then what should I do?" Nye Tion frowned, his face couldn't help but sink. He also felt the horror of the Sword Seal. If this kind of terrible power was released, not only would Rui Qianyu and Tawny be in danger, but Nye Tion would also be in danger. Fat Cat frowned, her face obviously became a lot more dignified. Her eyes kept flickering, as if she was thinking about something. "Nye Tion, there is only one way to save them now." After a moment, Fat Cat's eyes tightened, suddenly looked at Nye Tion, and said in a deep voice, "What way?" Nye Tion was stunned for a moment. His eyes couldn't help but flicker. Chapter 1687. Fuse the Sword Seal? Nye Tion was stunned when he heard Fat Cat's words. He couldn't react for a moment. "Yes." Fat Cat nodded heavily and said, "It's impossible to break the Sword Seal by force. The only way is to directly fuse the Sword Seal and let it enter your body." This. Nye Tion's eyes widened, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He finally understood what the little Fat Cat meant. Fat Cat wanted Nye Tion to directly fuse the 3 evils' Sword Seal. This was a relatively gentle method that wouldn't cause the Sword Seal to resist, but it was very dangerous for Nye Tion. When he fought with Ouyang Lingxie, Ji Wushang, and the others, his body had been immersed by the 9 evils' Sword Seal and the Evil Woman's Sword Seal. The powerful impact was still fresh in his memory. The 3 evils' Sword Seal in front of him was the power of the 3 Sword Seals combined. If such a terrible power entered Nye Tion's body, it would be a terrible impact. Could Nye Tion's martial body withstand it? Nye Tion, even I have no way of estimating what kind of power this Sword Seal contains. So if you want to fuse with the Sword Seal, the risk involved is very high. Little Fat Cat said in a low voice. It was precisely because the risk was too great that he had been hesitant to say it. Because he knew that with Nye Tion's personality, he would definitely choose to fuse the Sword Seal. Since my martial body can withstand the 3 forbidden techniques, it can definitely withstand the 3 evils' Sword Seal. Nye Tion calmed down at this moment. His eyes trembled and instantly became firm. He had made a decision in his heart. Fuse the Sword Seal. Nye Tion, don't be impulsive. At this time, Rui Qianyu heard what Nye Tian was going to do next. Her pretty face tightened and she exclaimed, "You don't know how terrifying this sword seal cage is. You can't withstand the impact of the sword seal." "Rui Qianyu, believe me." Nye Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at Rui Qianyu with a burning gaze. The corners of his mouth raised into a smile, and his body released a domineering confidence. "Nye Tian, you." Rui Qianyu sensed the determination in Nye Tian's eyes. She was struck dumb for a second, and tears welled up in her eyes. How could she not know that Nye Tian was risking his life to save her? "Nye Tian, since you've made up your mind, don't hesitate anymore." Fat Cat had also calmed down by now, and spoke in a serious tone. Nye Tian did not have much time. If the Ghost King Palace Master suddenly returned while he was integrating the 3 evil sword seal, it would be terrible. "Yes." Nye Tian nodded. His silhouette flickered as he approached the 3 evils sword seal. What a terrifying sword seal! Only now did Nye Tian realize the power of the 3 evils sword seal. It seemed to be even stronger than the 3 great forbidden arts. The Ghost King Palace Master must know how terrifying the 3 evil sword seal was, but he didn't fuse with it. He must be afraid that his martial body wouldn't be able to withstand it. The Ghost King Palace Master was an early-stage paramount god, and he also had the evil woman's sword seal inside of him. If he didn't dare to take the risk in this situation, it showed how terrifying the 3 evil sword seal was. Nye Tian let out a long breath of impure air. He calmed down and sat down cross-legged in midair. The 9 dragon veins in his body began to slowly revolve, and at the same time, sword will surged through his meridians. His body began to release strands of sword will, like tentacles, which spread out towards the 3 evils sword seal. Boom! The moment Nye Tian's sword will touched the 3 evils sword seal, the sword seal vortex released a terrifying force, which then released directly towards Nye Tian. Ah! At the same time, Tawny felt that the sword seal had become violent. She couldn't withstand it anymore. She screamed and a mouthful of blood spurted out from the corner of her mouth. "Tawny, are you okay?" Rui Qianyu screamed, and then released a force from her body to protect Tawny. Nye Tian integrated the sword seal. This was the most gentle way, but it still stimulated the sword seal to a certain extent. If he forcibly broke through the sword seal, Tawny and Rui Qianyu would definitely be annihilated by the impact of the sword seal. At this time, the power in the sword seal vortex began to rush towards Nye Tian. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian felt a raging power battering through his body, threatening to devour all of his meridians and bones. Ah! The sudden pain hit his whole body. Nye Tian couldn't help but scream. His body began to tremble, and his face became distorted. Nye Tian. Rui Qianyu looked at Nye Tian and couldn't help but scream. Her heart was in her throat. Her 9-colored pupils could clearly see everything that was happening inside Nye Tian's body. The power of the sword seal was like raging waves, crashing against Nye Tian's martial body, as if it was going to shatter everything inside of him. The power of the 3 evil sword seal was unimaginably terrifying. Ah! As the sword seal vortex continued to flow into Nye Tian's body, the pain was several times more painful than before, causing him to scream again. At this time, as the sword seal vortex rushed into Nye Tian's body, Rui Qianyu and Tawny felt the pressure around them lessen. But Nye Tian was in great pain, as if his whole body was about to be torn apart. After a while, the sword seal vortex completely entered Nye Tian's body, and Rui Qianyu and Tawny got rid of the sword seal. Rui Qianyu sent Tawny out of the cave, and then moved to Nye Tian's side. At this moment, Nye Tian's body was dripping with blood, and there were countless terrible wounds on his body. The wounds were dark in color, and the blood coagulated into blood clots, accumulating at the wounds. It was extremely frightening. Nye Tian. Rui Qianyu saw that Nye Tian's meridians had all collapsed, and there were cracks on his bones. She couldn't help but scream, and her eyes trembled. "Oh no!" At the same time, Fat Cat screamed and said in a trembling voice, "He can't hold on any longer." The horror of the three evil sword seal was beyond Fat Cat's expectation. It was even more terrible than the forbidden rune that Nyetian had absorbed before. Even if Nyetian had the tear of the princess in his body, he couldn't withstand the impact of the three evils' sword seal. Fat Cat felt that the three evils' sword seal was becoming more and more violent in Nyetian's body, and it was crazily tearing his martial body apart. If this continued, Nyetian would definitely die. At this time, Nyetian's divine sense had become blurred, and his body was stiff and numb. He could no longer feel anything. Fat Cat's eyes flickered, but there was nothing he could do. Nyetian's body trembled, and the breath of life in his body became weaker and weaker, as if it would disappear at any time. His martial body was indeed very strong, but unfortunately, his strength was too weak. If he had the strength of a lord or a peak high god, he might have a chance to integrate the three evils' sword seal. But now, he no longer had the chance. This time, Nyetian seemed to have lost the gamble. Nyetian. Feeling that Nyetian's breath of life was getting weaker and weaker, Rui Qianyu's beautiful eyes flickered, and she felt that there was a terrible power surging in her body. This power became stronger and stronger, and in the end, it suddenly converged and rushed towards her eyes. Ah! In the next moment, Rui Qianyu seemed to feel something, and she couldn't help but scream. Then, her eyes suddenly changed and turned into a dark green color.